3 new Land Before Time dinosaurs in Marshmallow Alphabet cereal.
Franchise fatigue. It's something we all gotta deal with at one point or another in our lives. What was once new and exciting quickly becomes stale and monotonous. A movie we all loved ruined by over-commercialization and pointless sequels. It's a tale as old as time. Sometimes it occurs 3 films deep, sometimes just one is enough for people to completely turn on an IP. But while we're all well aware of how audiences can become numb on these franchises, I feel we should also consider how they affect the studios themselves, because being overly reliant on a single property may at the time seem like a safe bet, but can lead to creative stagnation and sour the public's view on the brand. And then it's a slippery slope until they find their biggest cash cow has now become their death sentence. Welcome to my personal circle of hell. That's right, because you guys voted for it. Today we're going to be taking an in-depth look at the Ice Age franchise and everything it has to offer. That includes 5 main movies, 1 spin-off, 2 TV specials, a bunch of shorts, 15 years worth of fast food tie-ins, and the life and times of one of the most underrated yet unremarkable animation studios to ever exist. Yep, we've got a lot to get through. Throughout this no doubt fun adventure, I not only want to have a full autopsy and figure out where the franchise went wrong, but try and see if there's anything we can salvage from what these days is feeling more and more like a relic of the past. Even though Ice Age was once insanely popular, it really hasn't stuck around in the public consciousness like many of its contemporaries have. It's nowhere near as fondly remembered or memed on as something like Shrek, for instance, despite my personal belief that Ice Age has more value. Though to truly explain why, we first have to go back to the beginning. Before there were saber-toothed squirrels and a sloth with a lisp, back to the earliest days of Blue Sky Studios. The genesis of Blue Sky took place somewhere you likely wouldn't suspect. A little movie from the early 80s you might have heard of called Tron. Despite not exactly being a cultural touchstone at the time, only making a modest amount at the box office and having mixed reviews from critics, the ambitious sci-fi flick would go on to shape the film industry as we know it today, being a pioneer in the extensive use of CGI. Now, a feat as impressive as that would require all hands on deck, which is why Disney contracted 4 visual effects companies to bring the world of Tron to life. One of those being the studio Magic, which would be responsible for a majority of the effects found in the first half of the film, including the iconic light cycles. Disney was so impressed with their work that shortly after Tron's release, they hired the studio again in 1983 to help them create a test animation based on the children's book Where the Wild Things Are, which for when it was made looks insanely impressive, but unfortunately didn't go anywhere at the time. And following them doing another test for Disney, this time for the movie Something Wicked This Way Comes, Magi was sold to the Canadian company Vidimax, and many of the employees left. Shortly thereafter, 6 former Magi employees would form their own animation company, Blue Sky Studios, in 1987. Those being Chris Wedge, Michael Ferraro, Carl Ludwig, Alison Brown, David Brown, and Eugene Trubetskoy. From there, the studio would focus on mostly small projects, mainly creating special effects for TV commercials, much like a similar studio that was founded around the same time. Over the next few years, the studio would be responsible for over 200 commercials, including the first ever CGI M&M's ads and these iconic Nickelodeon bumpers. But all those iconic pieces of 90s nostalgia was merely to get their foot in the door, start building up their resume so that they could begin their true business, animated movies. But in order to make one of those, you first need an idea. Well, luckily for Blue Sky, said idea was about to quite literally fall into their lap. Y'all know the story behind Fox Animation, right? Well, for those that don't, let me sum it up. Following the critical and commercial bomb that was the 1994 Thumbelina movie, acclaimed animators Don Bluth and Gary Goldman were hired by Fox to launch a new animation studio. Seeing the writing on the wall for his own studio, which would close a year later, they accepted the deal. Unfortunately though, that losing streak just seemed to follow them, as only 3 movies would be produced at the studio before it too went defunct. The first movie, Anastasia, was a decent success, but from there the only movies they'd make would be a direct-to-DVD spin-off and Titan AE, a fantastic movie that only made $36 million at the box office against an $80 million budget. Now, what does that have to do with Blue Sky? Well, with Fox Animation only lasting a short time, they of course had a bunch of other features in development, including an adult musical adaptation of Dracula, a Disney satire called The Little Beauty King, and a movie based on a comic series called Over the Hedge. Who knows what happened to that? But one of these soon-to-be scrapped movies was a traditionally animated comedy set during the prehistoric times, simply titled Ice Age. Now, Fox was obviously in a bit of a predicament. That being, they still wanted to make animated movies, but no longer had an animation studio. You can see why that might be a problem. Now, a few years prior to this, Disney had partnered with another animation studio trying to break into the film industry, Pixar, where they had found huge success with 1995's Toy Story. But it isn't too far beyond the realm of belief to say that someone at Fox saw that and said, hey, why can't we do that? And so they decided to purchase a studio who until now had only done commercials and turned them into a feature film division. Take a wild guess which studio it was. And overseeing this transition was none other than Chris Meledandri. Yes, that Chris Meledandri, who suggested they continue developing the project at Blue Sky, but now as a computer animated movie. Gee, I wonder where he got that idea from. And so in 1998, development on the Ice Age project started back up again with Blue Sky co-founder Chris Wedge now in the director's chair. However, Fox weren't entirely happy with the more serious direction the film was taking and requested it adopt a more comedic tone, bringing on writer Michael Berg to achieve this. Official production on Ice Age would then commence in June 2000 with a budget of $58 million, though it wouldn't be smooth sailing, because no production in Hollywood will ever be described as smooth sailing. Berg and his co-writer Peter Ackerman left the project and were replaced by John Vitti and Mike Reiss, though the film was still in very capable hands, as these two were Simpsons alumni, who between them had written on episodes like Bart Gets an F, Lisa's Substitute, Cape Fear, The Way We Was, and Round Springfield. Some of the most beloved episodes of one of the most beloved shows ever created, so they absolutely had the chops for this. Naturally, the story and characters would go through a plentiful of changes in order to get the film we know today, but we'll talk more about those later. The role of the central protagonist, Manny the Mammoth, was given to actor Ray Romano, best known at the time as the eponymous lead in the CBS sitcom Everybody Loves Raymond. He was given the role because Chris Wedge thought his voice was very elephant-like. I assume he took it as a compliment. The deuteragonist, Sid the Sloth, would be played by John Leguizamo, which was actually kind of a wish fulfillment for him, as one of his inspirations as a child was Mel Blanc, who voiced basically all of the Looney Tunes. Because of this, it had been one of his career ambitions to do voiceover for an animated project. And rounding off the main trio is Diego the Saber-Toothed Tiger, played by Dennis Leary, an actor and stand-up comedian who had previously done some voiceover work as the character of Francis in 1998's A Bug's Life, but that was only the beginning of this film's impressive voice cast, as it would also employ the talents of Jack Black, Alan Tudyk, Cedric the Entertainer, Stephen Root, even Tara Strong is here doing what she does best, making baby noises. She also voices some of the incidentals, and I had to do a double take when I heard Timmy Turner in the first 5 minutes of the movie.
But Dad!
No buts! You can play Extinction later.
Okay. Come on, guys.
Composer David Newman was brought on to spearhead the music of the film. Newman's previous credits include the score for films like Heathers, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, The Mighty Ducks, and Matilda. Though perhaps most relevant to this story was he composed the music for Anastasia, which he received an Oscar nomination for. And in researching this, I found out he also recently wrote the score for Netflix's Green Eggs and Ham, one of the best animated series of the last decade. The point I'm getting at is that Fox was putting everything into this film, and for very good reason, because this wasn't simply Blue Sky's first ever film. This was Fox's second chance at making an animation studio that could rival Disney. Had Ice Age failed, it would have likely led to Blue Sky's time as a film studio being very short-lived, and would mean in the span of only 5 years, Fox would have to close down 2 failed animation studios, likely putting an end to this endeavour. It's a good thing all that paid off then, because on March 15th, 2002, Ice Age was unleashed onto the world where it proceeded to make $46.3 million on its opening weekend. This made it the highest opening for a movie in March at the time, and the 3rd highest opening for an animated movie. Though the question still remains, how does the film hold up over 20 years later? Only one way to find out. So the plot of Ice Age follows Manfred the woolly mammoth as he sets out to return a lost human baby to his family. He is accompanied by Sid, a sloth with a lisp who tags along with Manny in order to have protection from predators or just any other animal he might happen to annoy. They reluctantly team up with Diego, a Smilodon, who offers to help them track down the humans before they get lost in a blizzard. What they don't know is Diego is actually a double agent and is leading them directly to his pack and to their leader, Soto, who wants the baby to get his revenge on the humans for hunting them. Over the journey, the 3 mammals have to learn to get along and eventually discover what it truly means to be part of a herd. It's like 3 Men and a Baby meets The Godfather. Now, this will actually be my first time watching the Ice Age movies in order, because as a kid, I would pretty much only watch 2 and 3. Despite having this movie on DVD, most of my memories of watching it were from when it would randomly be playing on TV. With that being said, this film is great, and I know everyone already knows that, but let's talk about why it's so great. Starting with the writing. Not so much the humour, which we'll get to, but how the film sets up its characters and paces itself. When we first see Manny, we're greeted to this visual of him walking in the opposite direction of the other animals who are heading towards the migration. This simple visual already tells us everything we need to know about this character without him having to say a word. He's a loner, abrasive, and doesn't really take the feelings of others into consideration. When one of the animals tries to call him out for disrupting the flow of traffic, Manny is openly hostile and cruel, but softens up when he sees the guy's family, treating us to a brilliant piece of subtle foreshadowing. The main thing that stood out to me watching this film again is how it doesn't talk down to its audience, having an array of moments where they forego any dialogue and just let the visuals do the storytelling. Like, this movie has some downright beautiful moments in it. This is especially seen through Diego's change of heart. He doesn't have a monologue or debate with himself. Instead, his gradually building internal conflict is depicted entirely through his eyes. They don't feel a need to spell every single little thing out for the audience, which is again something that will be sorely missed the deeper we get into this. Though I will say, while the entire cast gives fantastic performances, Dennis Leary isn't intimidating in the slightest. He just doesn't sell me on the whole villain shtick, which ends up working in the film's favour to a degree. It's a lot easier to accept his redemption arc because whenever he's trying to be a quote-unquote bad guy, it really doesn't sound like his heart is in it. Another thing I enjoyed is how the writers of this film are able to find the perfect balance between keeping the characters likeable but also deeply flawed. However, I don't think it was intentional. Because of how long this film was stuck in development, it feels like at points you're watching multiple drafts being played at the same time. You would expect a statement like that to lead to me labeling this film as an unfocused mess, but it kind of balances itself out. Let's take Sid for instance, one of the most recognisable characters from the franchise. The movie does a great job at making you feel bad about the fact his family abandoned him and how he's all alone in the world. It's very effective at humanising him, which is something we're gonna see less and less of as this series marches on. However, Sid is also kind of a womanising jerk for a lot of the movie, which is so far removed from what we know this character as today.
If you find a mate in life, you should be loyal. In your case, grateful. Now get away from me.
Well, I think mating for life is stupid. I mean, there's plenty of Sid to go around, you know?
My theory is these jokes are leftovers from earlier drafts of the film, where Sid's personality was originally based off that of a sleazy car salesman or a con man, a far cry from the endearing buffoon the movie tries to paint him as. Yet, it somehow works. Likely because Sid is the butt of the joke a lot of the time, though I'm still glad this aspect of his character was quickly phased out. Also, I had mentally blocked out just how many gay jokes there are in this film, most of them targeted at Sid.
How about a good night kiss for your big buddy Sid?
Shh. He's asleep.
I was talking to you.
Bisexual icon? Let's shift away from that and talk about the comedy of the movie, because to me, it was a little hit or miss. I was thankful I did rewatch this movie rather than trying to write a review based on my warped memory of it. I recalled this film being much more witty and intelligent compared to the rest of the franchise, which starts to rely a lot on toilet humour. Well, that definitely wasn't the case, and it's clear this project is definitely going to hurt my nostalgia for these movies, because I'm now forced to understand that a lot of my issues with the later installments were present from day one, and in fact, might even be worse here. Same goes for the abundance of unnecessary film references. Also, I love this movie, but it commits the cardinal sin of making an animated Jack Black character unfunny. So yeah, a lot of the dialogue is admittedly not inherently hilarious. However, the performances of the actors does manage to save a lot of it, which will become this franchise's biggest and eventually only strength. The main leads all have a sense of charisma and truly embody the characters. I was really surprised by just how much Sid made me laugh. These lines coming from literally anybody else would fall flat, but John Leguizamo delivers them with such conviction and earnestness.
You have beautiful eyes.
Though I will admit, a large chunk of the humour comes from the primitive animation. Now, I think overall the stylized backgrounds and character designs have stood the test of time, but the animation itself definitely has its quirks, which leads to some unintentionally funny moments. I mean, just look at Diego's reaction here during what's meant to be a tense and emotional moment. This movie is a reaction image goldmine. Now, the reason I went over all that background at the beginning and keep talking about the earlier versions is so we can discuss whether or not the more serious version of this movie would have worked. Basically, do I think changing the film to be a comedy was the right move? Yes. Do I think the best moments of Ice Age are the more quiet and emotional ones? Also yes, but I don't think a movie made up entirely of that would work as well as the one we have. This is probably an unpopular opinion, but I don't mind a movie that has a mixture of dramatic moments and over-the-top goofy moments. It's my belief that you need both of them working in tandem. If a movie was nothing but comedy, then there's nothing for an audience to be engaged by. And if a movie is nothing but drama, how do you make the particularly poignant moments stand out? I think the reason the cave scene works so well is because it comes right after the dumb slide scene. Emotional whiplash can be a powerful tool if the filmmakers know how to use it effectively, and to me, Ice Age uses it very effectively. And speaking of the cave scene, yeah, it wrecks me every time. I think it's mostly the haunting, soft piano melody that gets to me. It's such a heart-wrenching moment that shows Blue Sky's potential for emotional storytelling. Though the cave scene also marks a definite change in the movie, as while it doesn't entirely cease, the comedy more or less takes a back seat, as from that point on the film becomes a sequence of intense action in between these more quiet character building moments. Now, the main draw of the movie is its found family dynamic. Oh, what a surprise! Jake's talking about found family again. So how does the film do at setting these guys up as a herd? Honestly, I think they pull it off well. Time is taken to develop each of the relationships within the group, though Manny and Diego get the most focus just because Sid is relegated to comic relief a lot of the time. But of course the heart of the movie is the human baby Roshan, who is the uniting force that brings these polar opposites together. I do think the film puts in enough work developing these characters so when you get to the moment where Manny saves Diego and calls them a herd, it feels appropriate and earned by the narrative. I do also appreciate how the film manages to avoid both a liar reveal and an end of Act 2 breakup, which for a film from 2002 is very impressive. Once Diego reveals his original plan, there's a quick moment of arguing, but then they move past it and work together to defeat the villains. And by the way, Soto is not a memorable villain. Not by a long shot. He's barely even a presence in the movie, only appearing at the beginning and end. But damn does he have a brutally memorable death. After seemingly giving Diego a fatal wound, Manny knocks him into a wall, causing him to be impaled by icicles, which is another thing that was foreshadowed earlier. And the film ends with our heroes reuniting the baby with his father as Diego rejoins them, despite being on his deathbed 5 minutes ago, but we'll talk about that later. And the herd starts heading south to join the migration, concluding both this story and the start of Blue Sky's legacy. Oh, right, Scrat's a thing. His whole deal throughout the movie is he can be seen chasing an acorn so he can store it away for the winter, only for misfortune to befall him. He will soon become the mascot of not only this franchise, but Blue Sky as a whole. Although the first movie really doesn't use him all that much, as he only appears a few times throughout. Unlike later films which give him full storylines, here he's used very sparingly. He's often within the vicinity of the trio where they'll quickly cut away to do a quick gag with him before the story resumes. They don't give him full scenes, aside from the very beginning and end of the movie, which is where I believe he works the best. This is also the most he ever interacts with the other characters, and honestly, it's kind of disorienting watching Manny go up to Scrat and try and have a conversation with him. Of course, we all know what happens from this point on. But right now, it's mid-2002, and all we have is one film that no one really had any high expectations for, but ended up doing better than anyone could have ever hoped. So the question on everyone's mind is, what was next for Blue Sky? Well, that would remain to be seen, but Blue Sky wasted no time at all cashing in on their triumphant debut. On November 26, 2002, Ice Age was released on home media, where it was accompanied by a massive marketing push involving several cross-promotional tie-ins with massive corporations. And on that DVD is where the story continues, as it contained the first ever Ice Age short. Now, why am I talking about a silly little extra made for the DVD? Well, this was the first piece of content released after the movie, but I also think it's important because this short does hold significance when it comes to the evolution of the franchise, and perhaps contains a little bit of foreshadowing as to where this is heading. Gone Nutty is a 4-minute short about Scrat trying to put his beloved but ever elusive nut with the rest of his stash. Eventually, his impatience and anger causes him to lose every single one despite his efforts to save what he can. It gets to a point where as he's falling through the sky, he tries to collect them. Meanwhile, Once Upon a Dream from Sleeping Beauty plays in the background, which is on par with the Star Wars episode of The Muppet Show in terms of being a harrowing prophet of things to come. And wow, do I feel sorry for this guy. I mean, what did Scrat ever do to deserve any of this? It is still decently funny, but I wonder if at any point the constant physical and emotional pain Scrat is put through will start to become uncomfortable to watch. And the short ends with Scrat accidentally causing Continental drift, beginning his character arc where with every single installment he will only grow more and more powerful to a point of possessing godlike abilities. But we'll get there when we get there. This is the last piece of Ice Age content we would have for the next 4 or so years, and it's certainly an interesting note to leave us on. Though what the short does tell us is Blue Sky was already seeing how marketable their little genetic abomination was. Kids just couldn't get enough of this guy in those early years, which led to him getting more screen time. And this kind of reaction with the mass commercialization of Scrat is starting to remind me of something, though I can't quite put my finger on it. Oh well, on to Ice Age 2. While talk of a sequel started as early as June 2002, Blue Sky was still a new studio, and didn't want to be seen as a one-hit wonder. So before they made any more Ice Age related projects, the team would first get to work on their second original feature, 2005's Robots. Now we can talk about Robots another day, because it absolutely deserves its own video. But what's important to know is that Robots was a success at the box office. However, with the release of Robots also came the teaser trailer for the much anticipated Ice Age sequel. Of course, there's nothing wrong with this. As I said, Blue Sky was still a relatively new studio, so making a sequel to their first ever big hit makes logical sense. However, this was the start of Blue Sky's descent down what is soon to become a very slippery slope, where they become increasingly more reliant on Ice Age to keep them afloat. Nevertheless, Ice Age 2 was merely inevitable, and after the runaway success of the first film, Fox did everything they could to ensure the next installment would be even bigger, and their methods of achieving this were a little bit strange. The marketing for Ice Age 2, later titled The Meltdown, was all over the place and at times nonsensical. Of course you had lots of merch, fast food tie-ins, video games, but then you get to the weird stuff like Sid hosting a programming block on Fox.
It seems today that all you see is violence and movies and sex on TV. But where are those good old-fashioned values on which we used to rely? Lucky there's a Family Guy, and he's coming up next.
And oddly enough, that wasn't the only Family Guy tie-in, as Blue Sky created original animation of Scrat for a cutaway gag for the season 4 episode Sibling Rivalry. Now, while using an adult animated sitcom to market what people saw as a kids movie may sound weird, from Fox's perspective, it kind of made sense. This was in 2006, when Family Guy was just returning to TV after being cancelled 4 years prior due to the overwhelming success of its home media release. Meaning at the time, Ice Age and Family Guy were Fox's latest animated hits, so using one to market the other and vice versa was a no-brainer. You know, if you just ignore everything Family Guy is and the demographic it's aimed at. Now, this is the part of the story where I come into the picture. Because when the first Ice Age released, I was exactly 16 days away from turning a year old, so I wasn't exactly there for it. The sequel, however, I was 4 turning 5 years old and it was releasing on my birthday, so yeah, I was definitely hyped. Probably the toy I played the most with as a kid was this playset inspired by the film, where you'd launch Sid on a piece of ice and he'd go round in a loop-to-loop avoiding the sea monsters and then through a tree triggering a lever that would drop down tiny pieces of ice that when put together spelt out Ice Age 2. This and the other various toys released by Mattel were a huge part of my childhood, and now they are rare collector's items. And I just have to hope I still have them. I also got a few of the Burger King toys, mainly this Scrat that when you pulled down his tail his teeth would chatter, and this Crash and Eddie toy which is the only one I could find while working on this video. So in order to congratulate me for making it to 5 years old, my family took me to see the movie for my birthday, and about halfway through, me and my, at the time, 3-year-old sister began chasing each other around the theatre. A few weeks later, we went on holiday, and Ice Age 2 was one of the in-flight movies, and that was the first time I actually sat down to watch the full thing, likely because it's hard to run around in a plane. The film was a massive success, completely blowing the first out of the water. It made $68 million on its opening weekend, and would go on to gross $661 million worldwide. To put that in perspective, that is more than every Disney Renaissance film except The Lion King made during its initial release. But after all this time, does it still live up to the hype? Ice Age The Meltdown sees our Sub-Zero heroes on a trek across the valley to escape an impending flood that threatens to destroy all of life as they know it. Meanwhile, Manny has to grapple with the fact he might be the very last mammoth. That is, until he meets Ellie. The only issue is that Ellie, being adopted and raised by opossums, thinks that she is one. Will our herd be able to escape the flood? Will Manny get his second chance at happiness? Will these sea monsters continue to terrify me to this very day? Considering this film came out 16 years ago, I imagine you all know the answers. Right away, the first thing you'll notice is the dramatic improvement in the animation. Everything feels so much more alive and detailed while still maintaining the cartoony aesthetic. While I did praise the attempts in the first movie to show what the characters were thinking, the Meltdown is much more effective in that regard. This was due to the new director of the film, Carlos Saldana, who had all the character models effectively rebuilt from scratch so that the eyes would look less robotic. And that kind of philosophy can be seen throughout every facet of the animation, especially the cinematography. Now, before we continue with the review of this film, I just want to quickly go on a rant about an issue I have with these movies. Despite many elements pointing to each sequel being a direct continuation from the previous movie, the early films will go to great lengths to avoid referencing any events from previous installments. To help you understand what I mean, let's discuss some of the storylines and character details found in the film. When we get our reintroduction to Sid, we see that he is trying to run a summer camp despite his lack of qualifications, as he has now become interested in childcare, which will further be explored in the next film. And this new aspect of his character makes sense, since in the first film, Sid was the only one of the trio who tried to look after Roshan from the very beginning. But this link is left in subtext because neither Roshan nor specific events that took place in the last film will ever be mentioned again, which I think is a really big missed opportunity. Imagine if in all the following films, Manny was still wearing the gift from Roshan's father. We wouldn't have to talk about it or draw any attention to it, but just it being present would give this series a much greater sense of progression. Getting back to Sid though, the whole childcare thing is only used in the beginning of the film to set up Sid's true arc of believing he deserves more recognition and respect. Telling Manny and Diego that he made their herd, which is one of the most blatant rewritings of history I have ever witnessed. Sid may have convinced Manny to help bring Roshan back to his family, but Manny is the one who invited Diego on the journey and was the first to actually call them a herd. And speaking of Diego, we need to address something kind of important about his character. Diego was meant to die at the end of the first film, and in fact he does die because we see his full death scene. However, as to be expected, this cut of the movie left test audiences traumatized, so the final scene was quickly rewritten so that Diego shows up again at the end, miraculously healed from his fatal injuries. Now I do feel this was the right move in the long run, because I don't see how the series could have continued without him. His level-headedness is needed to balance out Manny's grouchiness and Sid's stupidity, but it has to be said the first movie was written with him sacrificing his life to save Manny as the conclusion to his story, meaning going into the sequels there are no lingering threads left to pull on. So we're in this difficult position where Diego has to be here for the dynamic to work, but story-wise he has already reached a dead end. What ends up happening is the writers kind of start making up random gimmicks just so Diego has something to do in each of the following movies. So in this movie he's afraid of water, in 3 he tries to regain his edge, which as we've established he never really had in the first place, and in 4 he gets a girlfriend. Though I will say I love the new role he's been given in the herd, where he is now the most emotionally mature of the trio, being more sensitive to how his friends are feeling, which is shown through his interactions with Manny. As for the other side of the coin, Scrat is back as well and has also gone through some changes. While I still think the screen time he was given in the first movie was the most ideal amount of Scrat, the Meltdown does contain a majority of his most iconic and hilarious moments. The main difference is now his segments are all connected and entirely separate from the rest of the characters, though the focus is still on him chasing the acorn. The story doesn't go deeper than that, and it really doesn't need to. And at this point, the filmmakers still had a good grasp on when and when not to use Scrat, because it never feels like he's taking over the movie. Remember that point, because we'll be coming back to it. As for the new stuff, this film introduces an array of original characters. And I don't just mean our new main cast members. Looking back on the first Ice Age, it really didn't have a lot of supporting characters. The Meltdown from the get-go introduces like 30 brand new animals, along with a few returning who were previously in the opening scene of the first film, giving a lot of them unique personalities and running gags. And pretty much all these characters will become staples of the series and continue to appear in all future productions. Then we have our new additions to the herd, Ellie, Crash and Eddie. Now let's quickly get Crash and Eddie out of the way because I really don't care for them, even though I remember finding them hilarious when I was 5. Though now as a jaded adult, these two to me represent everything this franchise will eventually succumb to. Loud, obnoxious, and a vehicle for random pop culture references. Though in this film, I'll admit they are mostly tolerable because at least here they serve a narrative purpose. And the performers Sean William Scott and Josh Peck try and make the most out of what they've been given. Ellie, on the other hand, is amazing, and Queen Latifah imbues her with so much enthusiasm and energy that it's impossible not to find her incredibly likeable. And I have to admire how different Ellie was compared to other animated female leads from around the same time. She's allowed to be funny and a little bit of a wild card, while the film still manages to give her a lot of depth. Ellie is also a great place to start talking about the soundtrack. Instead of David Newman, this time we have John Powell in charge of compositions. Powell is likely known for being one of the greatest composers in terms of animation, writing the music for the Road to El Dorado, Chicken Run, and later on the Kung Fu Panda and How to Train Your Dragon movies. And while I adore some of the compositions from the first film's score, the music from Meltdown feels a little more coherent. There are clearly defined musical motifs that play during pivotal moments for the story and the character arcs, some of which now basically become the main themes of the franchise. Let me show you what I mean. If I told you to think of a piece of music from Ice Age, this would likely be the first thing that pops into your head over anything from the previous movie. Now, while I've been mostly praising this film thus far, it does have some issues. The main one being, it kind of falls apart during the middle section. The film takes a lot of time building up to when Ellie realizes she's a mammoth, and that moment is given a lot of weight. But after that, Manny and Ellie barely have time to form a relationship before things get weird and the two start bickering while the other characters kind of become aimless. Then once that's resolved, Sid gets abducted by a tribe of mini sloths who worship him as the Fire King. A great callback to the first film, but it comes out of nowhere and feels like an attempt to create something similar to the dodo scene. Then it's followed by the scene of the vultures singing a rendition of Food, Glorious Food from Oliver, which feels like it's trying to do the exact same thing. Then to drive that point home even further, the very next scene has a dodo appear and then comedically get killed off in a similar vein. However, after that, the film's quality does spike up for the final act, which is really well done. It's all very tense, the stakes are dire as Manny tries to reach Ellie before she drowns, while also having a final confrontation with the sea monsters. The acting and music are stellar, and they bring everyone's arc to a great conclusion. Even Diego's half-baked arc about conquering his fear of water gets a really satisfying payoff. I also love how in the end, it's Scrat that saves everyone by complete and utter accident. He once again tries to bury his acorn in the ice, causing it to split and allowing the water to drain out. After the flood, the sloth tribe appears again and invites Sid to join them. This time no sacrifices included, only for Diego to turn down the offer for him, telling them that the herd needs Sid because he is what holds them together. Then through the gap in the wall, a bunch of mammoths enter, revealing Manny and Ellie were never the last ones. Ellie decides to go with them, and Manny tries to let her go, only for Sid to convince him that he has to let go of the past and that he deserves to be happy, even if it means saying goodbye. Manny catches up with Ellie and tells her that he wants to be with her, while Sid and Diego start to walk off now that their trio has come to 2, only to be interrupted by the pair returning.
But your herd's leaving.
We are now.
And the ending also mirrors the closing scene of the previous film. With the valley and their home now destroyed by the flood, our newly expanded herd once again head off into the distance towards their next adventure. Oh, also Scrat canonically dies in this movie, and despite saving everyone, still isn't allowed to have a happy ending.
I saved you, little buddy, remember? Right? Ow! Ow! Ow!
Ice Age: The Meltdown is very different from its predecessor. Its more grounded tone has started to get a little more outlandish, the bite has mostly been taken out, and the comedy, while still having a lot of good dialogue, is leaning a little more towards overbearing and juvenile. But damn do I love this movie. Despite its problems with some of the writing and pacing, I still enjoy watching these characters' stories unfold, and all the technical improvements made from the last film in both its visuals and music. Ellie is a great addition to the established cast, and the film still knows when to have its quieter and more emotional moments. Maybe that's nostalgia talking, but I don't care. With The Meltdown, the Ice Age franchise as we know it was born, and Blue Sky now had 3 incredible films under their belt, 2 originals and 1 stellar sequel. Now why does that sound familiar? Ice Age 2 was released on DVD and Blu-ray in November of 2006, and stop me if this sounds familiar, included on the disc was an original short starring Scrat. No Time for Nuts is a bit different than Gone Nutty, and actually plays a bigger role in this story than you'd think. This was the first time we ever see the franchise really go all in on an utterly bizarre concept that is so far removed from everything we've established to a point where it doesn't feel like the same world. In the short, Scrat discovers a time machine which then zaps his nut away. So now Scrat has to chase it across history and of course gets into wacky and painful shenanigans along the way. Oh, also this happens. So, I guess I was wrong. They do make a direct reference to the first movie, in a short that is presumably non-canon, but still. No Time for Nuts is also important as it won an Annie Award in 2007, the first ever award Ice Age had won. Almost a decade later, the short was extended to 12 minutes and adapted into a 4D attraction for theme parks. And I imagine this would be a treat to experience in an actual 4D theatre, though I will say it is very noticeable whenever we switch from 2015 animation to 2006 animation. The new scenes are pretty fun, even though they get even weirder. Okay, so Manny, Diego and Sid are upgraded from having a non-speaking cameo to having full roles in this version. And when we get to the point where they originally had a reference to the first movie, it's reanimated to remove Roshan and instead now accidentally drags Sid into the adventure, which brings this whole new level of because by this point you expect these kinds of high concept premises for Scrat, but dragging Sid into it just draws more attention to how not Ice Age this feels. However, this time we didn't just get one short in between films, we got 2, though the next one wouldn't be released on an Ice Age DVD. The very next piece of this puzzle would be part of the home media release of Blue Sky's 4th animated feature, 2008's Dr. Seuss's Horton Hears a Who. Surviving Sid is the only time they did a short that wasn't focused on Scrat, and I kind of wish they did more of these because this is my favourite Ice Age short. The plot is a continuation of Sid's brief camp storyline from the beginning of the Meltdown, where we see him attempt to lead a group of kids on a nature hike. However, due to a mix of his lack of self-awareness, ego, and general incompetence, he continuously puts himself and the campers, but mostly himself, in danger. Now, writing-wise for me, Surviving Sid is the closest anything from this franchise gets to somewhat recapturing the feeling of the first film, with its more laid-back tone and Sid's characterization. There's this sort of simplicity to it that I can't help but find endearing. The kids are all given unique personalities and they serve as great foils for Sid's antics. It's also admittedly refreshing seeing Scrat only show up for a quick cameo, though his appearance was rather an unpleasant one. Scrat until now has been used for these Looney Tunes-esque visual gags with squash and stretch and cartoonish violence. Watching him stumble out of the shadows gasping for air because he's choking to death, which is mostly played straight, definitely crosses that line into this is uncomfortable to watch. In terms of visuals, the animation shows us this almost in-between point where the lighting and textures have clearly improved since the Meltdown, though it hasn't quite yet to reach the level of the next film. The short ends with Sid causing a chain reaction, leading an iceberg to plow through the land and leaving a canyon in its wake. The kids tie him up before he can do any more damage, and we jump ahead 20,000 years to find that Sid had accidentally created the Grand Canyon.
Only nature could make something this beautiful. Nature, or a being of infinite wisdom.
By this point, Blue Sky was in its 7th year, and despite all 4 of their films doing very well at the box office and often gaining favourable reviews from critics, the studio was still struggling to cement its identity and really wow audiences. What was it that made Blue Sky stand out when compared to other animation studios? So far, their catalogue included a prehistoric dramatic comedy, a sequel to that, a dystopian action film about the evils of capitalism and how free healthcare should be a human right, and a Dr. Seuss adaptation starring Jim Carrey. All drastically different films in their writing, tone, and style. Now, if you've been paying attention, you'll have noticed a pattern with Blue Sky's releases. First they'll do an Ice Age, then an original film, then an Ice Age, then an original film. I think we all know what comes next. On the DVD commentary of The Meltdown, it was stated that initial work had already begun on a 3rd installment, tentatively titled Ice Age: A New Beginning, which I personally think would have been a great title in terms of how the film would serve as a conclusion to Manny's arc from the trilogy. A few months later, on January 30th, 2007, looking upon the success of The Meltdown, then president of Fox, Hutch Parker, officially announced that a 3rd movie had been given the green light. This time the gap between films would not be as long as it had been between the original and Meltdown, with the film being slated for a summer 2009 release. This is rather noticeable as it is the first film in the franchise to not be released in March, which is usually a safe time to release family movies since kids will be on break from school but they won't have to deal with too much competition. But after how much the previous film made, Fox felt confident enough in the franchise to bill it as a summer blockbuster, going toe-to-toe with some of the biggest films of the year. The trailer would debut with the release of Horton Hears a Who on March 14th, 2008, now receiving the official title Ice Age: Dawn of the Dinosaurs. The creative aim of this film was to go bigger and do something brand new both narratively as well as visually. Because as much as I love the art style of this series, it'd be hard to make these similar looking backgrounds impressive a 3rd time around. The solution they came up with was to do a sort of what-if adventure with the characters, where they would travel under the ice and discover the lost world of dinosaurs. This bold direction immediately sparked the imagination of character designer Peter D. Severe, who was excited by the prospect because with dinosaurs he could take more creative liberties with how they would look. Unlike the transition to the first sequel, this time pretty much most of the previous team came back for the next installment. This includes Carla Saldana in the director's chair and music by John Powell. Ice Age 3 has always been a very special film for me, purely because of the unique circumstances in which I experienced its release. Because while I was excited for the Meltdown when it came out, I was obsessed with Dawn of the Dinosaurs. When I was younger and it was still affordable, my entire extended family would take a yearly trip to Florida. And even though these days most of those memories are quite fuzzy, I still look back on them fondly and yearn to return even just one more time. The final trip we went on was in the summer of 2009, when promotions for Dawn of the Dinosaurs were in full swing. Now that might not sound all that special, but what you must realise is that more often than not, a movie will release in America long before the UK, sometimes up to 2 months earlier, which meant I got to experience the hype for this film in both the USA and England, which was fun because a lot of things were exclusive to the States. For example, they were running a promotion where in boxes of General Mills cereal you could get a pencil topper, so I begged my family to buy a box and I got the Scrat one, which I was thrilled by because he was my favourite character at the time. We went to a mall and I got a ArteiceTB plush, which has sadly been lost to the sands of time, and by that I mean it was destroyed by a mouse. And perhaps the coolest thing, and what has stuck with me the most, over the 2 weeks we were there, I had managed to collect almost all of the McDonald's toys released for the film. The only one I was missing was Sid. And then I went back home and got to do it all again here. Yeah, this was the first time I had learned that different regions didn't always get the same Happy Meal toys. In Europe, they actually did something really clever with their Happy Meal collection in that there were 2 different sets of them, one based around Above Ground and one based on the Lost World. Now, the Lost World toys were simply the ones that they did in America, but only 4 of them. The Above Ground set was quite different. The main toys were these ice lolly molds that came with a figure, which weren't really anything new for the franchise. But you could also get these glasses that changed colour when you filled them. I'm fairly sure I only ever had the Rudy one, but my family got rid of it when we moved house. Maybe I'll be able to get the entire set someday, but who knows? Ice Age Dawn of the Dinosaurs premiered on the 1st of July 2009 and would go on to gross $866 million worldwide, eclipsing The Meltdown and every other previous film by Blue Sky. It went on to become the 3rd highest grossing movie of 2009, behind Avatar, and it went on to become the 2nd highest grossing movie of 2009 and the highest grossing animated movie, beating out films like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, Fantastic Mr. Fox, Princess and the Frog, and Up. Obviously that's quite impressive, but it makes you wonder if the film truly deserved that title. Well, let's take a look at Ice Age 3, Dawn of the Dinosaurs, also known as the best one. Yeah, I'm not even going to be subtle about it. This is my favourite Ice Age film and should have been where the franchise ended. That's not to say that what follows is bad, just that this feels like a natural conclusion to the story that has been told over the previous 2 movies. After escaping the flood, the residents of the valley have settled into a new home, but big changes are on the way. Ellie is soon to be expecting a baby, which starts to drive a wedge between the herd, as Diego attempts to leave and Sid once more feels that he's been abandoned by his family. While moping, Sid happens upon 3 large eggs that he thinks have also been left behind and decides he's going to take care of them. However, when they hatch, we learn that Sid's new kids are in actuality dinosaurs, and when their mother comes to collect them, she happens to take Sid as well. Now the others have to journey through the Lost World, relying on each other to overcome life-threatening obstacles, including a massive apex predator Rudy, so that they might reunite their herd and make it back home. Let's follow the same formula as the last film and kick things off by discussing each character's individual arcs and how they have evolved or devolved since we last saw them. And naturally, we'll start with Manny, since I've got a lot to say. Manny's main role in this film is to be a massive ball of anxiety over Ellie's pregnancy, especially once they embark on the adventure and have to start dealing with dangerous obstacles on their path. We still get a few moments of how stubborn and grouchy he can be, but for the most part, those aspects of his personality have greatly deteriorated. Though I feel this turn works for Manny due to the context of the previous films. Knowing Manny did once have a family which he lost adds a whole other layer to his behaviour and desire to keep Ellie away from everything the Lost World has to offer, lest history repeat itself. This leads to him often acting irrationally and making very dumb decisions, which I have mixed feelings on. At times it feels like the writers had some material they wanted to use for Sid but then had to cut it, so they just gave it to Ray Romano.
like I'm really gonna be afraid of a pretty flower.
Bet you didn't see that coming.
The other big thing with Manny in Dawn of the Dinosaurs is how he navigates his various relationships, which is not very well. The movie kind of throws Manny and Diego's bond under the bus with this whole guys don't talk to guys bullshit that was never a problem in the previous film. I mean, like I said, I get he's fixated on the baby and making sure everything goes right, but it does hurt his characterization a little when Ellie is the only one genuinely concerned about Sid and Diego and trying to keep their herd together. Though I think that this was also intentional on the part of the writers, because the film does call him out on it, specifically on how it reevaluates Manny's relationship to Sid. There's a moment about halfway through where Manny comes to the conclusion that none of this would be happening had he been a better friend to Sid. The thing is, I don't think this was Manny only talking about his actions at the beginning of this movie. I see it as him realizing he's never really been a great friend to Sid, which at the end we see him try and amend that. Speaking of Sid, let's talk about him next, because while Manny is still the focus, Sid is the heart and soul of this movie. It's an incredibly sympathetic portrayal of his character, which is notable since this will be one of the last times the franchise will treat him with any sort of dignity. It goes to show that there is still so much care going into these films because most other franchises wouldn't even consider revolving most of the film's quiet and emotional moments around the designated comic relief character. By expanding on his feeling of abandonment, they do a great job of making you feel bad for Sid even when he's making selfish and harmful decisions. You really do come to root for him in this story, so it's great when you see him actually start winning, forming a genuine relationship with Mama Dino, and somewhat succeeding at being a parent. Then we have Diego, who is once again not really much of a factor in the wider narrative. Now that Ellie has taken on the role of being the wise and emotionally conscious one of the herd, Diego no longer feels as important to the overall dynamic, even though I still couldn't imagine the series without him, because he is barely in the first half hour of this film, and yeah, you do kind of feel his absence. Ellie is still just as amazing as she was in the second film, though she has definitely mellowed out a bit since then. Despite this, they still do keep traces of her quirkiness in there, like having her hang from trees or being an adrenaline junkie. Also, she is an absolute badass in this movie, all while being pregnant. At this point, Ellie has become one of the highlights of the franchise, which isn't typically the case with characters introduced in sequels. Crash and Eddie return as well, but thankfully are nowhere near as annoying as their first appearance. Likely because they are given significantly less screen time. They're mostly condensed to a few moments which are helped out greatly by the presence of the film's new character, Buck, a swashbuckling weasel who after being in this environment for so long has completely lost his mind. His charm and sheer charisma perfectly balances out Crash and Eddie's obnoxiousness, which is absolutely attributed to Simon Pegg's outstanding performance that is able to make even the worst jokes entertaining. Also, did I mention he's an ally?
Hey, get off my lawn! Go on, shoo! I knew that guy when he was a caterpillar. You know, before he came out.
And then there's Scrat. If you remember in the previous film, Scrat's scenes would follow one after the other to give the gags a sort of sense of structure. Well, in Dawn of the Dinosaurs, they took that a little further, deciding he would be given a full storyline in which his feelings for a female saber-toothed squirrel called Scratette get in the way of chasing the acorn. Now, many people have made very valid criticisms about Scratet's design, and how weird it is that they tried to make this animated squirrel as conventionally attractive as possible. An outlier in a franchise where the female characters aren't typically designed to be thinner or curvier than their male counterparts. But that's all I have to say on Scratet, because she isn't a character. She's a plot device. A gimmick implemented to stop the Scrat routine from getting stale. And they kind of failed, because this movie is where I started to fall out of love with Scrat, since Buck was now my favourite character. Don't get me wrong, Scrat still has some good moments in this film, but they gave him way too much screen time. I think the issue is that in the previous films, we were following two groups of characters, the Herd and Scrat. In Dawn of the Dinosaurs, we now have to divide the screen time between Sid and his dino family, the rest of the Herd, and Scrat, which leads to some of the important storylines feeling rushed because they had to make room for Scrat. But that's pretty much the only major problem I have with this film. As mentioned, with the new environment, the character designers and animators just let loose with this installment, creating the most visually interesting movie of the series with its vibrant colours and perspective shots that really emphasise how small the characters feel in this alien world. The fact this movie was built from the ground up to be shown in 3D is very prevalent, and while at times it can be a little distracting, it also leads to much more interesting shot layouts. Like, each time Buck has to drop some exposition, the camera movements and transitions start to go wild. It's so weird to me that I was praising the Meltdown for being more inventive with its cinematography, whereas this film makes that look like a single camera sitcom in comparison. The animation feels more alive than ever, and it really helps punctuate the comedy in ways the franchise hadn't explored until now. Linking onto the visuals, I freaking love how this film utilizes Rudy as this ever-present threat who is always one step behind our heroes. They do an amazing job building him up through little teasers where we only see parts of him or his shadow, communicating how massive in scale he is until we get to the full reveal at the end, which adds up to him being the first villain of the franchise to leave a lasting impression. Now, on to the humour, which is still continuing to get more juvenile, except when it's being needlessly raunchy. However, I still see it somewhat as an improvement over the Meltdown, even if we disregard Buck. It felt like it took a step back in terms of pop culture references, and any that did make it in are quite brief and subtle enough that they don't take you out of the experience. This also means the characters don't feel as much like joke machines, as the comedy more so naturally arrives from the dialogue, similar to the first film. It feels like the characters are driving the comedy again, rather than it being the other way round. And just quickly, I'm gonna touch on the music. Of course, it's John Powell again, so we hear some returning themes from the Meltdown during pivotal moments, but my favourite musical moment was after Ellie gives birth to their daughter Peaches and Manny sees her for the first time. In the background is a soft piano rendition of the song Mammoths from the end of Meltdown. I appreciate the use of piano here because even if it's not the same melody, it somewhat does allude to the cave theme from the first film. In fact, for a good few minutes, I was trying to listen to both of these tracks back to back because I had somehow convinced myself that there were parts of the cave theme in there. The story starts to wrap up with Rudy seemingly defeated and Sid saying goodbye to his dino family. Buck feels that now Rudy is gone, his life lacks meaning, so the Herd convince him to go home with them. However, just before they make it back, they hear Rudy survived, causing Buck to realise that he belongs down there. Once they are safely above ground, the Herd celebrates by watching Peaches play in the snow. And for the first time, the film ends not with our characters walking off into the distance because now they have all found exactly where they need to be. I've got to be honest, after letting this franchise completely consume my life for the past few weeks, which has allowed me to gain a much deeper appreciation for these films on a storytelling level, these final moments did get me a little choked up, because it truly feels like a definitive ending to this journey. All these characters reach a satisfying conclusion that bookends the first movie brilliantly. So, that's the end. We've had 3 great movies, something a lot of animated film series struggle with. We should be done now, right? Dawn of the Dinosaurs was an outrageous success, propelling Ice Age into one of the biggest animated franchises of all time. So, of course, Blue Sky was going to keep going and expand this world until the point it starts to burst. Though first, I think we need a bit of a break. We've been talking about Ice Age for well over an hour now, and I'm starting to get the feeling some of you out there might be getting tired of hearing me review the movies and the shorts and talking about Blue Sky. And this is also going to be for my benefit. Until now, this video has been mostly positive, due to the nostalgic fondness I have for those first 3 films. However, the further we get away from Dawn of the Dinosaurs, the more cynical and annoyed I'm going to become. So every once in a while, we're just going to take a pause so I can do something stupid involving the franchise and not think about how its quality eventually falls off a cliff. And we're going to start that by playing the Ice Age DVD game. This was released in 2009, the same year as Dawn of the Dinosaurs, and contains clips from all 3 films. I also just want to point out how questionable this game looks, since it takes a bunch of different vectors of the characters from all 3 movies and just kind of mashes them together, which gives it this almost bootleg quality. Like, that's a Diego from the first film, that's a Sid from Dawn of the Dinosaurs, that's an Ellie from Dawn of the Dinosaurs, the Scrat and the Manny both come from the Meltdown, and the fact I know this just proves I have no life whatsoever. Fun fact, I have had this game for over 10 years, and have never even once played it, so this is going to be a very interesting experience for all of us. Alright, so, today we're going to be playing the Ice Age DVD game.
The Ice Age DVD game.
Yes. As I just told everyone, I have never played this before, despite owning it for years and years and years. Yeah.
I knew it was going to be useful in the long run.
I know. So, let's just read the instructions. We're on a bit of a time crunch right now because we don't know how long all our various cameras are going to hold out for.
We're surrounded by screens.
I know.
This is the modern age.
It's 1984.
This is the...
Alright, so the object is to reveal and collect all 4 acorns of your colour before the other players while avoiding Rudy the dinosaur. Do you remember Rudy from the third film? Yeah, alright.
I remember Rudy.
Yeah. Right, so set up. Insert the DVD into the DVD player. Already done that, we're one step ahead.
Yes.
Alright. Unfold the game board and place it on a flat. Done.
2 steps ahead.
Each player chooses an Ice Age character. Alright. I'll let you go first, and then if you choose the character I'm going to choose, then I'll just have to kill you.
Diego.
That's fine, that's
you
fine.
You weren't going to choose Diego.
I was going to choose Sid.
I knew you were going to choose
Alright, so...
Something in me said that you're going to choose Sid.
Yellow, green, blue, or red? Which one do you want?
Green.
Green? Alright, I'm going to start off on yellow. Alright, so we've done that. Place the 4 double-sided acorn tiles on their corresponding spaces on the centre of the board, which I've got right here. Blue, red,
rolling up my sleeves.
yellow, green. Ooh, you look very teacher-esque today.
Thank you.
You look like you're about to give me some homework.
I'm going to give someone else detention later.
Okay!
Why did you immediately assume it was going to be dirty?
Shuffle the remaining tiles and randomly place them on the eye side up the rest of the game board pieces. Done that already. So I'm very curious because obviously this is a DVD game, but it's specifically not a scene it, not a trivia game. Though it does contain clips from all 3 films.
Oh. I had DVD games when I was younger, quite a few of them.
Oh no, I still have them. I've got Disney Scene It up in my room.
Yeah.
We can play that sometime.
I think we played them, I can't
That
remember.
might be a fun thing to do.
I used to be one of the people who would be like, bonus features.
Oh, same.
I'd literally really annoy my family because they'd be like, we finished watching the movie an hour ago, what are you looking at? And my mum like doesn't like behind the scenes things because she's like, it ruins the magic.
Okay, so we've done all that. Alright, play the game.
Play the game.
Select play the game from the DVD menu. I guess we should first open the game.
Yes.
Oh my god, you see the setup now? Oh thank god. The product, including its soundtrack, is authorized for private use only. Oh dear. Whoopsie! Might just be breaking the law a bit there. Be gay, do crimes.
The FBI are going to be knocking on our door.
No. This is like the actual company that makes Scene It. Because this is the intro to Disney Scene It.
Maybe they were trying something different.
Or maybe it's just the case Ice Age wasn't popular enough to get its very own Scene It.
Aww, I love Ice Age though.
I know, like, I wouldn't be making a video on it if I didn't.
Welcome to the ArteiceTB game.
Oh, thank you, disembodied voice. Alright, we don't need to know how to play, so we're just going to... Alright, we can either play the game, go to credits, or get some help. I feel like we need some help.
I don't think we need some help.
Alright, we're gonna play the game.
We need help generally in life.
Okay.
But not this game, probably.
Alright, I'm going to read the instructions. The youngest player goes first, and play proceeds clockwise around the table. Well, I'm the youngest. The goal for each player is to find and collect the 4 acorns that match their start colour. 1 acorn of each colour is already revealed at the centre of the board and may be collected as soon as that player lands on it. But the other 3 acorns are hidden beneath the ice and must be revealed before they can be collected.
Right.
You following so far?
I'm getting it, yeah.
Yeah. To begin each turn, select Next Turn from the game menu. The DVD prompts the player to turn over an ice tile of their choice and select Continue. Leave the tiles overturned throughout the duration of the game.
Right, so you just...
Yeah, so when we say Next Turn, it'll tell us to just turn over a tile, and then basically, you know, if it's an acorn, we have to try and get to it.
Right.
Okay? Players are then presented with 1 of 8 mini-games. Each minigame has its own on-screen instructions which will guide the player through the minigame. At the end of the minigame, the DVD will tell the player how many spaces to move on the game board. If a player lands on a space that reveals their acorn colour, they may stop on that space and collect the acorn tile. Players cannot move diagonally, but can move both horizontally and vertically on a single turn. They can move through other players' movers and can end their turn on the same space as another player. Players can move over tiles regardless of which side is up, and they can move over spaces that no longer contain a tile. Players cannot move through Rudy game pieces. See Rudy rules. We'll get to the Rudy rules in a bit, just hold on to your horses. If a player lands on an acorn of their colour while moving their game piece, they may stop on that space and collect the tile. Players may not collect an acorn of any other colour besides their own. This concludes a player's turn. Select Continue and pass the DVD remote to the next person. Don't worry, we'll figure it out as we go. Alright.
Ironically, this is Ice Age and it's melting my brain.
One of the ice tiles hides an image of the dreaded Rudy underneath. If a player turns over the Rudy tile, select the Rudy button on the screen instead of the Continue button. Then remove the tile and put the Rudy game piece on the square where the tile was found. From this point on, the DVD will prompt each other to move Rudy a certain number of spaces after they move their own character. The DVD will tell you how far to move him, and Rudy must move the exact number of spaces. If Rudy passes through or lands on a space with a player's character on it, that character is sent back to the start. Rudy cannot collect acorns. Once he is on the game board, Rudy remains in play throughout the duration of the game. As soon as a player collects their 4th coloured acorn tile, they win the game. Simple!
Is it?
I guess I go first, because I'm the youngest.
Yeah.
By how many years? Alright, next turn.
Why are you pressing it on the TV?
I don't know.
See, this has melted your brain as well. Here you were pretending that it was just me who was done.
Okay. Ooh, I love the transitions.
Nice.
To begin your turn, flip over 1 tile on the game board.
Alright.
Any tile.
Click on the Rudy button.
Oh, I think I get it.
It's a blue acorn.
It's none of ours.
Continue.
One Watch the falling acorn.
Oh, okay, it's not Scrat. Ah!
Oh, you've got to decide which one has
Yeah, I
the
know.
most in it.
Oh god, it's either of the two end ones. Oh no.
And you've got to choose a log.
Oh no. I'm making Scrat noises.
Oh, you did it.
Move 3 spaces.
Oh my god. Okay.
So where are you? Where are
1,
you going?
2, 3, 4.
Oh, so where you go like?
Oh no, wait, wow, I moved 3 spaces on the board. What am I saying?
This is reminding me of Uno again.
Next turn.
My turn.
Alright, so flip over a tile.
Just any tile.
Just any tile.
Blue.
It's another blue. Oh, such fun music to have over this like traumatic scene.
Yeah.
The most items that can be found on the wall.
What? Wait, I've got to just like.
Yeah.
That's easy.
Well, it took you a long time.
I'm looking at it. I thought it was gonna like hide them at some point.
Move 3 spaces on the board.
Just any 3 spaces.
Just any 3 spaces that aren't diagonal.
What? Sorry.
Remember the rules!
I don't know the rules. Never tell me the rules.
Okay, just
One.
just any 3 spaces.
Wait, what? Can I go this way?
Yeah,
2.
no.
No.
Yes, you can. 1, 2, 3. There you go.
You're doing that for me.
Why are you even here? I can just play the game for both of us.
You could play it on your own.
Next turn.
In your turn, flip over 1 tile on the game board. If you turn over the
It's a
Rudy
red
tile,
acorn.
click on the Rudy button.
I'm having one over these rules.
Try to memorize the musical sequence.
Oh no, it's Simon. 1.
Now we'll replay the first part of the sequence. It will be your job to keep it going.
Oh my god, no! Dun, dun.
What 3 notes come next?
It's, dun. Dun. Dun.
You're just...
No!
2 notes right. Move
Oh.
2 spaces
Oh,
up.
That
okay.
means I can only move 2
So
spaces
you
on the
moved-
board.
You move the amount of spaces that you've... Oh, so once you get to a tile with your colour...
acorn, you collect it.
Okay, I'm getting it.
Yeah, there you go. There you
See,
go.
Reading rules or listening to rules never works for me. It's just, yeah, I have to see it happen to figure it out.
Right, flip a tile. Any tile.
To begin your turn, flip over 1 tile on the game board.
Cheers.
If you turn over the Rudy tile, click on the Rudy button.
Wait!
Got green.
My own tile.
So there are only 8, so I imagine at some point they're going to start repeating themselves.
Probably.
Follow the fishing lines and try to catch the biggest fish.
Follow the fishing line.
The setup might have been a mistake. It's the middle. Wait, why am I telling you? Oh my god! Why are these actually hard? This is for ages 6 and up. Give it a go.
Yeah.
You caught the second biggest fish.
You got the second biggest fish. Can I move back the other way?
Yeah, you can. You can move anywhere.
That's fine. This works out very well for me. Now I just...
Yeah, you just take it. That's one of your tiles.
Hell yeah. I have a tile.
Yeah. Oh, this is the first time they've like played the next bit of the clip.
If you turn over the Rudy tile, click on the Rudy button.
Did I really put all the blues together? I swear I did shuffle them.
I swear I did shuffle them. I've heard that before from you.
Which dead body holds the most acorns?
Tell me you know which one it is. Yeah, good. It didn't even move. It went back to the same place.
I know, that's how they get you.
You've got to move 3.
No, because I can stop and pick up a tile
Oh, right. Okay.
if I land on like mine. I think that's how it works, but that's how we're playing it.
If you you turn over the Rudy tile, click on the Rudy
Oh,
button.
no, sorry. Why have I just apologised to a tile?
Oops. Yeah, that's all. Let's just continue.
Oh, it's just
It's
leaves?
nothing. It's just nothing. Because there's just leaves, acorns, and the Rudy tile.
Oh, okay, right, okay.
You get nothing!
Oh no.
Yay! You did it! We're just like speeding through this. There's 20 tiles.
Fast.
To begin your turn, flip over one tile on the game board.
Hey!
Turn over the
Look at me! Look at me go!
Cracking.
It's an inconvenient truth.
follow the floating
Inconvenient.
icebergs.
Oh no! Follow the floating iceberg!
I'm gonna judge you after, isn't it? Follow them.
Yeah. Right, I guess I'm... Alright, I've got to find one that says 3, I guess.
Oh yeah, probably.
Oh no, I've lost... No! No, I lost the one I was focusing on! No! Oh no! Alright, I'm gonna go for the middle one. It's the smallest. I feel like they'd hide the 3 on that. Betting small. Betting small.
Yes!
Move 3 spaces on the board.
Yep, I will. 1, 2, 3.
You made that very dramatic for what it was. We all knew you were gonna go there.
Turn
One
over a
tile on
tile.
the game board.
The twink told
If you
me
turn
to.
over one tile,
No! Why did you do that?
Just as he said, if you turn over the Rudy tile so casually, I'm like, Rudy!
did you flip over the Rudy tile?
Yes.
Yeah, I did.
Uh-oh, Rudy is on the loose.
He's right next to me. Why did you do this to me?
Oh, he's next to you. What? What am I doing? Choose
It's
a
another one. It's another one. You've got to try and make it to the 3 basket. I would go with the end one.
Yeah. Oh, there's a ball rolling down the... Right, okay, I'm getting it. 'Cause I'm getting it wet.
You got the 1.
Why'd you listen to me?
Space on the board.
I'm trying to beat you.
I thought this was just for content. Something in my brain was like, yeah, we're discussing this because this is content.
Move Rudy 3 spaces on the board.
It doesn't say which way we have to move him.
Just away from ourselves. This game's
To begin
brutal.
your turn,
I know.
flip over
It's a lot harder than I was expecting. Oh! 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 Oh!
Alright.
Is this clip again? No! Why is it Simon again? I'm gonna get it this time.
Try to memorize the musical sequence.
I know they're gonna play like the last 3 notes.
Do you?
Hopefully. That one. That one. That one.
3 notes come next.
Oh no. They didn't switch it on us. It's the same question. It's the same question. Alright. The tension is real.
We need some dramatic music.
You got all 3 notes right. Move 3 spaces on the board.
Oh, would you look at that? Oh, look at that! Look at that right there!
I forgot about this competitiveness.
I'm having a great time.
To begin your turn.
Whoa, really?
One
Oh yeah, it's green. Of course it is. Alright.
This isn't even from the movie. This is from the teaser trailer.
Hold the fruit down. Try to make it into the
Not
3 basket.
I love how we've both been given the ones we failed at again.
Yeah. Is this the it's not the same setup, is it?
No, because they want as many on that side as there were before.
I don't know if I trust you. I trust Jake a lot of the time, apart from when we're playing any game, and then I'm like, we're now mortal enemies. Let me see.
Oh, bold move.
Oh, 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 ha ha ha.
Well done, you.
I mapped it out in my brain and I got it wrong, but also right. Can I move on a tile that has not been taken?
Oh yeah. That'd be a clever way to play the game, though. I'm moving really close to me, but it's fine because I'm about to move away.
Oh, confidence.
I'm not even sure if those are the actual voices, because I don't think they've actually got permission to use the voice actors. Or maybe they just got Scrat because he's voiced by the director, so he's not a big celebrity, so they can easily get away with paying him very little. Yeah, because you've got Ray Morano, Dennis Leary, John Leguizamo, Queen Latifah.
Yeah, they did get some
Josh
names,
Peck.
didn't they? Yeah.
No, because that's Jay Leno, but they've removed the voice.
You gotta watch it, bro.
Oh shit, I think it's that one.
Choose a shell.
I wasn't paying attention. I think it's the middle one.
You got 3 acorns. Move 3 spaces on
God
the
damn
board.
it. That taught me, huh?
I just want to say, featuring clips from all 3 films, this is what we call false advertising.
I mean, it features a clip, but...
It features clips, but they're not like... They're barely clips.
It's just like, what content can we use here that's both interesting and has no voice actors in it?
So it's mostly just scrap stuff.
Yeah.
I think maybe we heard like a slight yell from Sid at one point, but I think that's it.
Yeah.
2, 3.
What?
I'm ahead of you. Rudy, 2 spaces on the board.
Oh, right, yeah.
You don't say.
Ah.
Wait, why am I getting nearer to you? That's the worst thing I could do. I'm trying to get you out. I do love that the game doesn't tell you like which way to go, so basically it's just you trying to like sabotage each other.
It's competitiveness, isn't it?
All right, it's your turn.
I love that you give me this, even though my job is to flip a game board.
No. That's your job.
Oh, thank goodness.
It's leaves. This clip again doesn't feature many clips from all 3 films. It features like 2 from each.
Oh God.
This is probably the most evil one. Another one I was watching has gone.
Same.
Choose an iceberg.
An iceberg.
It's not going to be nice.
It's nice, isn't it?
It's not an iceberg.
Move 1 space on the board.
There is the green tile right there. So you should probably go towards that.
I've got 1 move.
Not this again. Just like, how? How do you come to this conclusion? He's dead.
Very good. No, wait, not very good.
Turn. Flip over 1 tile on the game board.
Imagine if it just got stuck there.
Oh my god. No! What?
Move 2 spaces on the board.
I feel like a 2. Wait.
Well, oh, sugars, I forgot to flip a tile. Yes! Yes! No, it's this one again! For God's sake. Okay, I'm fairly sure it's the middle one.
You got the most acorns.
Oh, thank God. We could do like different versions of this game. Like one where it's like, you know, the other person who didn't just have their turn is the one that moves Rudy. That might be how you're supposed to play it, and we might have just neglected that.
Just not done it.
Flip a tile. Any tile. Not that it matters.
Flip over 1 tile on the game board.
Okay.
Alright.
Leaves. Oh, it's this one. I forgot which one this is.
It's the one where you have to like follow... Yeah, you've got to follow the line up and catch the biggest fish. Okay.
There's an easy way to do this question.
Okay.
You caught the biggest fish.
I was half expecting to be like, you got the second biggest fish. 3 spaces.
All I have to do is get 2 spaces. Oh, it's Piranha, no! No! It's the middle one. And it's the middle one, I think.
The biggest fish?
No.
Ooh.
The doubt is setting in. I just need 2.
You caught the biggest fish.
Gee. I wonder what that means. I wonder what that means. What can I possibly do?
You could move Rudy 1 space.
I know, I can move Rudy 1 space and I can also move myself 3 spaces. I wonder, where can I go? Where do you think I should go, Vic? What should I do?
I think you should go back the other way. All those leaves, they look fun to traipse in.
Well, I mean, you know, I could do that. Or I could go. And win the game.
Oh, damn, I tried to trick you.
Oh. Better luck next time.
I know.
So, what are your thoughts?
You caught the second biggest fish.
What are your thoughts on the Ice Age DVD game?
It's fun. It's definitely difficult enough that like a parent could enjoy it as well as like a kid. You know, I'm thinking like the target audience here.
This has been the first. What do I call these? I mean.
What? What is it? The first?
Well, it's little breaks I do during the video when I want to stop talking about like the movies and you know like stop getting depressed over how bad it all gets.
This has been the first snack break.
Ooh, yes.
All about snacks.
I will see you guys back at the desk.
And I'll see you later on.
Yeah. Maybe in this video, maybe in another one.
Maybe.
Who knows?
You never know where I'm gonna pop up.
I know. Have yourself a merry little Christmas. Make the Yuletide gay. Okay, in my defense, it's now November when I'm filming this and I don't celebrate Thanksgiving. Once Dawn of the Dinosaurs proved to be an even bigger hit, Blue Sky immediately got to work on a 4th installment. Though, let's not get ahead of ourselves, as we still have to talk about what came in between. This time, there wouldn't be a Scrat short released on the DVD, or any shot for that matter. Instead, for the break between the 3rd and 4th film, Blue Sky would grace us with a full 26-minute Christmas TV special. Gee, I wonder where they got that idea from. Ice Age: A Mammoth Christmas is the first of 2 holiday TV specials released in the later years of the franchise. In this special, Manny tells Sid that he's on Santa's naughty list after the sloth accidentally breaks his Christmas rock, which has apparently been in his family for generations. Okay. After Peaches hears Manny mention Santa isn't real, her, Sid, Crash and Eddie travel to the North Pole to both prove his existence and get Sid on the nice list. Along the way, they meet the reindeer Prancer, face off against another tribe of mini-sloths, and learn to believe in the magic of Christmas. Let's start with the obvious. The animation of this special, while not terrible, definitely looks rough. The textures and character movement feel like the Meltdown, but the lighting screams the first film. Obviously this was made for TV, so I don't want to simply trash how it looks, because it's clearly being made on a smaller budget and a shorter deadline, and the backgrounds still look nice. But there are little details like characters walking in the snow and not leaving footprints, aside from when it's plot relevant, that just irk me a little. Now, am I really about to criticize a harmless holiday special for continuity errors and mischaracterization? Don't be ridiculous, of course I am. This special was annoying. Manny is overly cruel to Sid even before he does anything wrong and never apologizes. As if we didn't just have a whole movie addressing how Manny needs to be a better friend to Sid. And in the end, he's absolved of all his wrongdoings because he learns about the Christmas spirit, even if he's still awful to Sid. And Sid. Oh boy, Sid. Sid is almost insufferable in this. So little of the character's charm or endearing qualities are present here, to a point where I feel no sympathy for him whatsoever. Especially since now he's basically become the 3rd player in the Crash and Eddie comedy show. Only other thing to note is that the gay jokes have come back in full force. I will say Peaches is enjoyable, if a little generic. She's played here by Ciara Bravo, who you'll know as the little sister in Big Time Rush, and she does a nice job. It is noticeable when she she's really putting her heart into her performance, while the regular cast just seems to be phoning it in and doing their usual stick. The rest of the characters don't do a whole lot. Diego and Ellie are there, Prancer is voiced by TJ Hill, and it's TJ Hill giving a TJ Hill performance alright. They try and give him an arc, but it's hardly developed. The highlight of having to sit through this special though was Scrat. Due to the 20-minute runtime, Scrat hardly appears in this, but whenever he does, it's a treat. His material mostly consists of parodies of various pieces of Christmas iconography, such as the Grinch or the Nutcracker, which are simply fun to watch and don't overstay their welcome, unlike the rest of the special, which consist of either gross-out jokes or characters yelling. There were a couple of decent lines, but they were few and far in between. In fact, let me show you every moment from this special that at least made me sharply exhale through my nose.
You'll break it.
Sid can't break a rock.
Don't tempt him.
He says, honey, you can't come with us. This is a very dangerous journey. The North Pole is a desolate land of ice and snow.
My family raised me to be good to strangers, and there's really no one stranger than you guys.
Huh? Bet the mini sloths could help you make presents every year. Right, guys?
Well, we're gonna need hats. Cute hats.
Meet my family. Dasher, Dancer, Vixen, Comet, Cupid, Donner, and Blitzen.
The special ends with the characters accidentally destroying Santa's sleigh with an avalanche because, oh yeah, I guess Santa and magic exist in this world now. Then the herd comes together to sing a song and save Christmas. Then Santa punishes Scrat for no reason because he's kind of a dick in this special. And that ends the first thing I saw that made me even slightly regret this project. But hey, at least it's not canon. Now, earlier I said there was no Ice Age short released between the third and fourth film, and that isn't technically true, as there was 2010's Scrat's Continental Crack-Up, which was released in December of that year alongside the film Gulliver's Travels. This was then followed by another short the next year, Scrat's Continental Crack-Up Part 2, which was released alongside Alvin and the Chipmunks Chipwrecked. I will not be dedicating time to analysing either of these, because they're not shorts, they're glorified teaser trailers for the next film. In fact, both of these shorts are merely the first two Scrat scenes of the movie, which makes me wonder what came first, the shorts or the film, because the first short was released just over a year after Dawn of the Dinosaurs, which is a little early to already be teasing the next installment. However, in May of 2010, the fourth film was not only announced, but given the full title of Ice Age Continental Drift. Okay, this is too hot, I'm taking this off. In January 2010, it was reported that BlueSky was already negotiating with the voice cast about a third Ice Age sequel, later confirming in May of that year that the film, subtitled Continental Drift, would be released in July of 2012, just over 10 years since the film that started this whole thing. This would be the first Ice Age feature since the Meltdown to not be directed by Carla Saldana, with the role instead being taken on by Horton Hears a Who director Steve Martino and Mark Thermaya, who had actually co-directed Dawn of the Dinosaurs with Saldana. So even with the change, we were still in good hands, especially since the script was once again being written by Michael Berg and Laurie Forte was once again producing. And of course, John Powell was once again returning to helm the score. And that was kind of it. Now, for the previous two films, I've gone on long tangents about their marketing and my memories of their release, but for this one, unfortunately, I don't have a lot to say. I can't really recall seeing that many advertisements for it, but I'm fairly sure I did see it in theatres. Maybe. I got this McDonald's toy. You wind it up and they walk forward. There were other ones, but I didn't get any of those. I just can't recall being as hyped for this movie as I was for Dawn of the Dinosaurs. I mean, I bought this Scrat plush off eBay just so I'd have something to talk about, but what can I really say about it? Ice Age Continental Drift was released on July 13th, 2012, where it would go on to make a staggering $880 million at the box office, once again becoming the highest grossing animated movie of that year. However, it should be said most of this comes from international territories, as In North America, the film was actually the lowest performing in the franchise at the time. Critics, however, were very mixed on the film. Sure, there were some positive reviews here and there, but most people were expressing that they were becoming worn out on the franchise and how this film did very little to change that. As for me, I enjoyed it fine when it came out, but over the years the amount of hate it received really did turn me against it, as I too jumped on the Down with Ice Age bandwagon. I even got rid of my 3D Blu-ray copy of the film because why would I ever watch it again? I mean, this was the film that ruined Ice Age. Needless to say, when I started this project, I knew this film would be the most interesting to revisit, because now I have a chance to actually form my own opinion on it. And now I feel kind of stupid, because I've just spent so much of this video building up this movie as the point where things start to go downhill, and to my surprise, I found this film utterly delightful. And to help articulate how we have all been lied to and Ice Age 4 is good actually, I've decided to call upon the assistance of another creator who holds the same affinity for this franchise as I do. Alright, so as future me just said, because I haven't recorded the wraparound segments for Dawn of the Dinosaurs yet, for the Continental Drift review, we're going to be doing something a bit different, as we have yet another special guest.
Hi.
Why don't you just tell the people a bit about yourself and, what you do? What's your MO on this website?
Oh, right. I'm ArteiceTB. I have a channel, ArteiceTB, and I talk about animation to analyze that and talk about representation. I draw. I write. I do a little bit of everything. Mainly on YouTube. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, sometimes TikTok. But I'm here because I love Ice Age so much.
Yeah, that was the main reason I invited you to come on and do this review with me, is because it is so rare to find someone who has the appreciation for this franchise as much as I do. Alright, so we're gonna follow pretty much the same structure I have for all the other reviews. Arteice, would you like to give us a brief plot synopsis of what happens in Ice Age 4 Continental Drift?
Yes. So in Ice Age 4 Continental Drift, it's essentially Manny with his now teenage daughter, Peaches, and their family, Sid and Diego, all now living on kind of like a newer island, or new area that was different than where they was in like Dawn of the Dinosaurs in the third movie. But all seems peaceful, but things kind of go awry when Scrat, offhandedly, accidentally causing Pangea, splits up continents, and then that causes a literal rift. There's a metaphorical rift between Manny and his daughter because she's a teenager and she doesn't want to be embarrassed, but Manny, overprotective dad, and if you remember what happened in the first movie, there's a good reason for that. Becomes a physical rift between them, and him, Diego, Sid, and Sid's grandmother all get drifted up to sea. So they try to journey back to the family, all while they're trying to avoid like all the moving, shifting tectonic plates. And then there's like an actual villain in this one, a primate pirate and his whole swashbuckling crew that just wants treasure and hoards, and like basically they have to go up against this pirate and try to get home. It's so climactic. And Diego meets a female saber-toothed tiger. It's all good, all good. High sea adventures. There was a sea shanty, high emotion near the end of just them coming together. It's just so cathartic as hell. And the family grows in the end, where they add Granny and the saber-toothed tiger named Shira, voiced by Jennifer Lopez. She did a good job.
We're gonna kick things off by, just addressing each of the characters and how they change over the course of the story. Starting with, of course, our trio of Sub-Zero heroes, beginning with Manny. With the time jump to Peaches being a teenager, Manny, like for some people, would have kind of fully succumbed to the overprotective dad trope. While I still think it works here, especially because in a really weird twist, the dad is right for once in this story, which is something I really enjoyed. I do feel it is getting a bit worrying how much the franchise is continuously relying on how impactful Manny's story was in the first film, it does add to the tension of the climax, because you can't even imagine everything that Manny is going through with Peaches and Ellie in danger, and when they show up back home and they find the land bridge destroyed, it really is such a heart-wrenching moment.
I know from the first movie and overprotective dad tropes or blah, but for Manny it just makes perfect sense. And again, like when you mentioned about the land bridge being destroyed, put yourself in his like overmassive shoes. He's yet again worried about losing his family again, of things that's out of his control. He can't do anything. He's gonna lose yet another wife and child, and it's just so tragic. So when they come back together, it's so beautiful. It's so cathartic. That's what I love most about like the Ice Age franchise in general. It started my love for found family tropes. How like this saber-toothed tiger, who's usually a predator, a lazy sloth, a gigantic mammoth, are somehow able to be a family and grow into a bigger family with a mammoth who thinks she's a possum and these annoying possum brothers. And it's just so damn beautiful. It's the most weird family on the outside, but on the inside there's just so much damn love between each of them.
Talking of found families, let's move on to Sid, because Sid in this movie really surprised me. With Sid's arc, it's the last time the franchise really cares about things that happened in the previous films, with the reintroduction and then quick hastily getting rid of Sid's family. And there is still sympathy given to Sid. You know, his family abandoning him isn't treated entirely like a joke. It really does feel like a natural continuation of Dawn of the Dinosaurs, where that was really expanded on. The other thing I really love about Sid, and it isn't really to do with Sid per se, but Manny and Diego are actually trying to be supportive friends, which again just shows how much they have grown over the previous films. Because even when Sid screws up in this movie, they don't dwell on it, and it really does feel like these three truly care about each other. When Sid stupidly eats the berry and gets paralyzed, if this was Manny from the Meltdown, when he's picking up Sid and running and constantly hitting his head on everything, and then he uses him to whack the bird away, he would not say sorry after that.
Yes!
I had to literally rewind the film to watch that moment again, just because I could not believe how genuinely caring Manny was being towards Sid.
Say adieu, Mammoth! Sorry, buddy.
Okay, Sid has his moments where he's definitely meant to be the comic relief, but when you think more about it, and with how often his family abandoned not just him, but their grandmother, and just ditched the granny onto them, which, oh my god, Wanda Sykes as Granny had me rolling the entire time. I love that woman. I'd say between Manny and Sid, they're both the most tragic of the characters, because I feel like for Sid, he just uses comedy as a coping mechanism, where it's yes, he's not the brightest bulb, but he's not completely unaware. He knows his family abandoned him. He knows he's not wanted, but being with Manny and the others, it makes him feel better about himself. So even if he does screw up, they at least know he's genuinely trying.
And then finally, completing out, the original trio, we have Diego. Now, throughout this video, one of the main points I've kept bringing up is that I'm fairly sure the original story of Ice Age did have Diego dying at the very end. For the past two films, I've been in this conflicted place where it's obviously I want Diego to be there. I'm happy that, he's still alive. But there's also a case of his story came to an end, and it kind of felt like the writers were just picking up random things to give him a storyline of. Here, as unnecessary as the idea of giving Diego a girlfriend is, I feel it's the most substantial storyline he has had since the first film. Even if it does feel about tad rushed when they have that moment on the cliff where Diego says, "Come with us, come with me." We've only had the one scene, and it was only a few seconds of them seeming to genuinely get along. But even then, it shows how much he has grown since 2002.
Diego's my favoriteest of the trio. I will ride or die for that cat. Oh my gosh, I love Diego so much. He Him with She-Ra. Now, I understand where you're coming from, where you feel like there wasn't that many moments. I would constantly rewind just all the times they were on screen and watch the compilations. He chased her down so many times throughout that film, and that to me is like, because they're both saber-toothed tigers, that's kind of how they communicate. He sees her strength and respects her for that, but is also kind of intimidated. And she sees him as just like a loose cat that's lost his way, but is actually stronger with the new family he's with instead of like the old pack that he had beforehand. All the little moments of like they were pinning each other, and when Granny said, "If they kiss, I'm gonna throw up," that was the tension. It's, oh my gosh, and I think it's kind of like enemies to lovers, but kind of enemies to friends to lovers. It's just them communicating in their own special way of a certain species we don't see enough of, because like we see a bunch of mammoths, we don't see that many like saber-toothed tigers, we don't even see that many like predator animals in the Ice Age world. And it, to me, it's just so fascinating, because also she has white fur, black stripes, he has orange fur. I wanted them to have actual tiger babies. I was here for it, man. But I think it helps reground Diego in his like roots of a saber-toothed tiger, but also helping another tiger out of that toxic mentality of independency, and especially with She-Ra herself dealing with guts in his BS. He felt for her, because maybe he saw a bit of himself in her, damn it. And at this point, I'm just rambling, and it's like, it's my favorite OTP. I read so much fanfic of it.
And on to Scrat.
What is there to say about Scrat?
I've got some interesting things to say about Scrat. What I really like about Scrat's presentation in Continental Drift is how it feels very similar to the first film, where he will just randomly show up in the same place as the trio for a quick gag during a scene, and then he'll just dip out. There are still dedicated scenes for him, but they are very much spread out. It's like, there are times in this movie where it felt like we could go 10 to 15 minutes without seeing Scrat, which for this stage in the franchise was kind of hard to believe.
I feel like when it came to Scrat in this movie, like, I feel like anytime the scene wanted to make a transition, he was a great middle ground for that transition.
Let's move on to Ellie.
Oh, Ellie. She didn't do shit.
Yeah, that's basically, that's my notes. I love how the film tries to give us a Manny, Diego, and Sid-centric story. Ellie. Their adventure mostly comes at her expense, because now she has a lot less screen time, and because of that, most of her personality is relegated to the role of mother. When in the Meltdown and Dawn of the Dinosaurs, she was funny. She was, a little quirky, a little over the top, and that's something that I really grew to love about her, and in Dawn of the Dinosaurs, she was one of the highlights for me. So to see all of that kind of get taken away, even though she does still have her moments, like, we still see her hanging from the tree, that kind of thing, Peaches has taken a lot of those quirks and traits that were originally Ellie-centric, and it's not left her with a lot to do.
Well, I feel like, in Ellie's defense, she was introduced in the second movie, had a lot there, and learning about her. In the third movie, yeah, she's pregnant, but she's still that fun, quirky mammoth. And mainly because I think part of my worry was with Ice Age is if the franchise kept going, that the family would eventually probably keep growing and growing, and that, unfortunately, some characters are just gonna get less screen time, or we're just not gonna see as much of them. Now, personally, I would not have been opposed to seeing less of her possum brothers, but that's just me.
No, that's me as well. My next note is, though at least this does mean Crash and Eddie are hardly in the film as well, so disasters have an upside, I guess.
That is exactly true. I feel like for this, and especially considering Queen Latifah, for the voice of Ellie, great job, by the way. I feel like at this point, she's earned her moment of like, yeah, I'm just gonna play support and leader in the background and make sure all the animals get across the land bridge. So, if anything, she played a role that was suited for her. Yes, we kind of lose out on that goofiness, but I mean, once you become a mother, and especially in a do or die situation that they're in, don't really have a lot of time to be goofy and silly. Now, her brothers, on the other hand, that's just them. But I like that most of that has shifted into Peaches, Because that just shows, like, yep, you're Ellie's daughter, alright.
Let's shift on and let's talk about Peaches. As a character herself, I find her non-offensive. Kiki Palmer is naturally acting her heart out, and she does have some really great moments, like when the other mammoths diss her for being part possum, because that's another thing I didn't remember but was delighted to see come back in a semi-big way. And how she isn't, they don't dwell on her being ashamed or trying to hide that part of herself. She fully embraces and loves it.
And you could also kind of argue that Peach's mother, since Ellie was raised by possums but is a mammoth, she kind of has like that dual cultural aspect of her. And of course, the mother is going to teach that to her daughter. So Peaches in a way is kind of like 1/3 possum. So could it also just be a commentary on when kids of a multi-cultural background gets teased and placated on because, like, oh, but you look like a mammoth, but you don't act like a mammoth. You're not acting like a mammoth enough. Oh my god, Ice Age is so deep, no one understands! Ah!
This is why I brought you on, because you are the only other person that will take these characters as seriously as I do, because I love them so much.
Yes! This makes me want to do my own Ice Age videos. You inspired me, Jake.
Oh, thank you. That's what I'm here for.
Peaches could also be a good stand-in for, like, when it's your child and you come from, like, a generational kind of background of, yeah, your parents are both mammoths, but your mom was adopted by this kind of culture. Kind of reminds me of Francine Smith from American Dad. She's white, but she was raised by Chinese folks. Which is a lot of the kind of different things and issues like adoptees kind of have to deal with, especially if you're adopted within a race that's not your own. You have to be aware of that. And then when those adoptees have kids, whether they choose to have them or if they adopt, of course you're going to teach whatever you learned in your cultural upbringing. You're going to pass it down to your kids. But your kid tries to get along with the other kids that are either just have one ethnic background, and your kid's going to be seen as the weird one. But your kid's not the weird one. Your kid's the more interesting one. Your kid's the cool one. Because your kid is, like, more well-rounded.
Now we're just going to quickly go through the remaining characters that are introduced in this movie, because there's a lot.
But I feel like for the pirates, we haven't seen, like, an Arctic rabbit. We haven't seen, like, a kangaroo, a skunk. Especially, I've not seen, like, an orangutan. But they are technically, like, the first capital V villains, bad guys in the Ice Age franchise. And I gotta say, they deliver. They're a delight. I hate, but also love watching Guts, because this this pirate dude, gorilla, monkey, sound like Frieza, the damn monkey, wants to drive between a family, and I'm just not having it. Ice Age meets Fast and Furious. It's all about family, man. And, like, all the pirate crew, like, yeah, they didn't get that much in-depth look at all of them, but I didn't imagine that they would. But for the moments that they had, they were memorable here and there, and they were fun. Like, the rabbit. Oh my gosh, the little rabbit was fun. The kangaroo, that's another thing I really like about, like, Ice Age, and reminds me of Flintstones, where they just use what they have, and that's kind of like their own version of what technology would be. Like, a cannon. Brilliant! Innovative! Creative! God, I love this franchise!
I'll just say, I love Lewis, and I really wish he's got to stick around for, like, the 5th movie. Because could you imagine, like, if they had been able to have Lewis and Buck interacting? If they, like, gave them, like, their own little storyline, how great would have that been?
Lewis, like, further growing into is not to be a coward. Sure, that'd be so great.
Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say on the characters. I just want to reiterate how great it is that it still feels like natural continuations of all these different stories. I was shocked to go into this movie and just see that most of the smart writing, the consistency, just the overall dignity of this franchise remained completely intact.
I remember the promos for Continental Drift because they were everywhere, especially, and I had the DVD, so they were teaching kids how to do, like, the dance. Do you remember that? The dance Continental Drift?
No.
Bro. No. How do you not remember? I learned the fucking dance. Pardon my French, s'il vous plaît. But it was like, you step front, do the sit, pull it out, do the sit, and they step left, do the matinee, step right, and do the matinee. Now jump, wriggle your rump, and walk it out like granny. Come on, man! Come on!
Let's get away from that. I can unpack that later in my own time. Oh my god, the animation in Continental Drift is so pretty.
Oh, it's gorgeous. I'm a sucker for animated water, and I'm so happy that they were like mainly in the ocean. Ugh. The fur, the texture, when you like really look really close on like either Nanny or Diego, or especially Shira, you can really see like the particles on their fur. Like each individual like fur line, it looks so fluffy or slick, or even when they get wet, you can smell the damp fur.
Alright, and on to the humour, which is another thing that really surprised me. Because this might be the funniest Ice Age movie.
Yes!
And it's weird me saying that about the one that barely features Buck. A lot of the dialogue is just really well written, in like a way that I was not expecting.
It's like, it's witty, fast-paced, and especially when it comes to the physical comedy, slapstick. Because I feel like it's always been like a strong point, because if it's not Sid getting hurt, someone's getting hurt.
I remember the bit where like they get separated, and it's like originally like they're going out to sea and they get in the storm. I think every single line of dialogue in that scene made me laugh. That pretty much covers all the notes that I've made. Do you have any other points you want to bring up about this film?
Sharon and Diego also had a scene. They also shared a moment where Diego had her as a captured prisoner. That was a moment when they were first shanghaiing together and had to like fish her out of the water because saber-tooth tigers don't know how to swim. That was Diego's arc. In the second one, he didn't know how to swim. That was a moment when the two of them were looking at each other and she was like, I got your back. That was a moment when he saw the sirens and mistook one of them as like actual Shira. That was a moment. There's a lot of moments. You just didn't see it, Jake. You just were blind to my shipping.
Closing thoughts. I really loved this movie. I expected to find it okay. Instead, it might be my second favorite of the franchise.
I would be more satisfied if people actually gave the movies a genuine chance, and like they don't have to like love it to the degree we do. I mean, that would be nice, but just to see the beauty of what Ice Age means to us, what it can mean to someone else, especially with like the themes of lost, home, found family, identity. It's a beautiful movie, and the studio just got handed such a bad deck of cards.
So, I know for the time being that, well, you're not exactly taking a break, but you finished uploading for the year, and do you have anything you want to plug? Any past videos you want people to see, or you want to, talk about any future projects you're working on?
Well, again, you can find me at ArteiceTB on YouTube, Instagram, basically everywhere with that tagline. Check out my channel. Check out why I complain about lesbians and why MLM guys gay rep needs more representation and deserves better. Why I think Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy are a bad couple. Why I think Millie from Hell of a Boss is underutilized. I just have so many, I don't want to say controversial takes, but also takes where it's like no one really thinks about it hard enough, but I do. Where I just sit on my soapbox for 5 to 10 minutes at a time and overthink. But yeah, and if you also want to just see me tangent, you can check out my double standards of sexual harassment in animation video at one of my cool ones. And watch Black Dynamite on HBO Max. It's a good show. I also made a retrospective on it. My favorite video. Just go out, stay hydrated, eat a good snack. What is good, that is up to you.
Wiser words have never been said. Thank you so much, Arteice, for coming on here today and talking with me about Continental Drift. It has been a pleasure to have you, and, I wouldn't mind if we could talk more about Ice Age in the future. Or just other things.
Most definitely. Thank you, Jake, for having me, because, again, like you said at the beginning, it is so nice to have, like, another person who is a diehard for this franchise. It's like, you get it, we get it, even though you've never seen the Continental Drift, like, dance. You're gonna have to learn that dance.
Oh God. I'll make it a Patreon stretch goal, that's the only way it's happening. Alright, and now back to future me, because I still have not recorded these segments yet.
Good luck with that!
So, who could have seen that coming? 4 films in, and this franchise still continues to surprise me with how funny, thoughtful, and complex these films really are. I see Continental Drift as a really well done epilogue to the series. Dawn of the Dinosaurs wrapped up the story of the trilogy near flawlessly, whereas this feels like a nice final romp with these characters that is loaded with callbacks and payoffs to the first film. But despite the less than stellar reception, the film still made bank, so they weren't going to stop there, even though they absolutely should have. The next few years would prove to be the biggest gap between films in the franchise since the Meltdown, with the next installment not releasing until 2016. This break between movies would also finally see Blue Sky buck the trend of only doing one original film between Ice Age sequels, and the reason for this is because Blue Sky had a new franchise. In March of 2011, just over a year before Continental Drift, Blue Sky released Rio. It's a story about Blue, one of the last blue macaws in existence who was taken from his home as a baby and found by a girl called Linda in Minnesota, leading to Blue becoming domesticated and thus never learning how to fly. The pair meet an ornithologist named Tulio who invites them to Rio, Brazil in the hopes Blue will mate with Jewel, the last living female of his species. The two birds are taken by smugglers who plan to sell them on the black market. They're able to escape, but soon find themselves lost in the jungle. Now the two must work together to survive, as well as evade the lead smuggler's pet, Nigel, who is hunting them down. Along the way, they make several allies, get into wacky mishaps, and eventually start to fall in love. The movie musical, which was Carlos Saldana's passion project, was a success, bringing in $485 million worldwide, making it the most profitable non-Ice Age Blue Sky movie. Critics also generally liked the film, praising its colours and visual design, animation, and music, which just so happened to be composed by John Powell, as well as the performance of its all-star cast that included Jesse Eisenberg, Anne Hathaway, Jermaine Clement, Jamie Foxx, George Lopez, and more. It seemed lightning had finally struck twice, and Blue Sky had another potential series on their hands, as well as a chance to carve out a name for themselves outside of the studio that makes Ice Age. This was exactly what they've been waiting for, and they were ready to strike while the iron was hot. And that not only meant starting work on a sequel soon after, but capitalizing on Rio as much as they could. A sequel released in 2014, and while critics weren't too kind to it, it did manage to surpass the original at the box office, though not by much. I imagine Fox were expecting an increase in numbers similar to The Meltdown, which the film didn't quite reach. Despite the film still being a massive success and Saldana having ideas for more stories, Fox didn't move forward with any more Rio projects, which meant once again Blue Sky had no choice but to return to old reliable. 2016 was a big year for Ice Age, as it would see the release of several different projects for various mediums, which for a franchise that's 14 years old was quite impressive. For people that weren't quite burnt out on the Sub-Zero heroes, this was looking to be a very promising time. By the end of 2016, the Ice Age franchise would be put on life support, where it would never recover. With the release of the Peanuts movie in 2015, also came with it a brand new Scrat short. That again wasn't really a short and was later revealed to be a teaser trailer for a new sequel. However, unlike last time, I am going to talk about this one because I believe it properly sets the tone for what's about to happen to this whole thing. Cosmic Scratastrophe sees the saber-toothed troublemaker accidentally stumbling into an alien spacecraft, which then shoots him off into the stratosphere where he proceeds to shape the entire known universe by crashing into various planets. This symphony of buffoonery ends with him sending a comet hurtling towards the Earth.
Hey look! Shooting stars!
Oh, quick, make a wish, you gotta make a wish!
Wow! My wish came true.
I'm okay!
Mine too.
it's not going to take me long to get through all my main problems with this short, as a lot of them also apply to the 5th movie, so I'll be expanding on them more there. Simply put, this short isn't funny. Everything moves a mile a minute, which really hurts the slapstick, which is the only type of comedy on offer. Because there is never any breathing room, none of the torment Scrat goes through leaves an impact. Literally. The animation is so focused on being zany that it ends up throwing Scrat around like a ragdoll, as if he has no weight to him at all. Also, what is this? Why was this an image the world needed to see? The other major issue I have is the animation. Not that it's bad, in that it's too good. Due to the massive leaps in technology, the fur texture looks so detailed and lifelike, which doesn't work with the exaggerated character designs of the franchise, giving it this uncanny feel to it. Then there's how Scrat has been utilised. Others might disagree, but I really don't like it when the later Ice Age projects start to make Scrat far more important than he should be, having him be the catalyst for the main plot. Because the whole point of Ice Age is that it's the characters trying to survive natural disasters. I understand this urge to link Scrat to the main story more, but having him accidentally shape the world and universe to his will isn't the way to go about it, and betrays the point of his character. He's meant to be a break from the more serious and emotional stories, not the cause of them. But as I said, that's just my opinion. And now, before the release of the 5th and final movie, Blue Sky would drop another TV special, this time focused on Easter and acting as more of a direct continuation from Continental Drift. And thankfully, this one doesn't completely break the universe. Ice Age: The Great Eggscapade was released in spring 2016, and there's a lot going on, so I'll just give you the play-by-play. Ellie is preparing their Easter feast, but is disheartened to learn not only does Peaches have plans with her friends, but doesn't see the point in having the entire family together. Sid, meanwhile, is starting a new not business venture, a pre-hatch preschool, where he'll sit on other people's eggs for free. Meanwhile, Squint, the pirate rabbit from the previous film, who is now distractingly voiced by Seth Green,
Your 9 lives are over, kitty! There's a whole world out there to pillage and plunder. You can sit here with your late bloomin'. I'm gonna get to pillage and plunder it.
seeks revenge on the herd, and he does this by stealing all the eggs that were under Sid's care. So now the trio embark on the first ever Easter egg hunt. Also, Crash and Eddie invent April Fools. This was actually the first piece of Ice Age media I hadn't previously seen before starting this project. And after the experience I had with A Mammoth Christmas, I didn't have the highest hopes for this one. But believe it or not, I actually had a really good time. Starting off with the fact this special is sort of a conclusion to Sid's arc of working in childcare, which I have no idea how this became an arc, but it works. They directly call back to his summer camp from the Meltdown and his dino kids, and despite his negligence, you do see how passionate and genuine he is in his attempts, even though the conclusion is him finally realising he's not exactly cut out for this line of work. Everyone's more or less in character. Yes, Manny and Diego are dismissive of Sid at first, but once things actually get going, they're both very supportive. I especially like how at multiple points, Manny comes to Sid's defense, such as when the parents of the missing eggs start threatening him. While Diego and Ellie still don't have a lot to do plot-wise, they do still have way more screen time than the previous special, getting in some good one-liners because the writing is actually pretty decent. I wasn't expecting to crack up a lot, but I ended up cracking up quite a bit. The only thing to really note is She-Ra isn't in this special, though they do at least explain why, even though the real answer was most likely Jennifer Lopez was unavailable or unwilling to contribute. As for the animation, it's pretty good, so long as it's not dealing with the snow or any liquid. The lighting and character movements are mostly solid, though there are certainly questionable moments. The only bad thing I can say about it is its over-reliance on modern references and film homages, which have been a slowly developing problem for the franchise as a whole, but here we have reached a point where it's suffocating. I don't mind a little bit of Flintstones-esque flair every now and then for tools and objects, but when it starts to delve into technology, that's when it becomes distracting. Also, the special stops halfway through for an elongated Raiders of the Lost Ark reference that doesn't add anything and feels pointless. Also now, chocolate exists in this world, I guess. I mean, it's nowhere near the universe-breaking editions of the previous special, but it still makes me raise my eyebrow. The special ends with Sid defeating Squint, making up for his previous mistakes and saving the day. Peaches decides that actually family is important, and Sid helps create the legend of the Easter Bunny. Oh, and Scrat is also in this, but barely, only showing up at the beginning and end. He's fine, though I will note I like how they remembered his martial arts skills from the Meltdown. But yeah, that's all I really have to say about this one. It's not amazing, but it's enjoyable enough, and I wouldn't mind watching it again someday. Which is more than I can say for the next few things we're going to be looking at. So first, let's take another break, and this time I've got something really fun planned. Often when it comes to video games or merchandise, you'll hear people talking about how some characters were never really meant to be brought into the third dimension. Well, what about when companies have trouble translating a character who is already 3D? Hello and welcome to the second ever snack break, as Vic so eloquently dubbed them, where today we're going to be ranking the plush representations of Sid the Sloth. So as you can see, Sid plushes tend to fall into one of 5 categories. Friend-shaped, Tumblr sexy man, might pick up for cheap, would wash hands after contact, and kill it with fire. Alright, and we are starting off with this specimen. And here we're already seeing one of the big issues that's going to keep coming up, where with a lot of Sid plushes, they don't really know where to put the eyes. And the worst ones, rather than putting them at the side, just have them sit on top, so it looks like this weird amphibian abomination. It is 100% cursed. Like, just look at this thing. I'm not quite sure if it lands in Kill It With Fire territory though, because it still kind of looks like Sid. I mean, even if the eyes are just sitting on top of his head and they're quite beady, the general essence of the character is there. So I think I'm gonna put this guy in would wash hands after contact. Alright, and next to face my wrath is this fine fellow. I don't really have that many problems with this guy, except maybe the lips, because I don't quite get why so many different plushes of Sid feel like they have to include his lips, because it just kind of adds the whole uncanny feel. But I mean, I think this guy's cute. They've got the eyes in the right place, so it's definitely an improvement over the last one. And it's just kind of, it's got this energy to it that I can't help but love. And you just look at that like goofy grin on his face. I think this guy's a Tumblr sexy man. And next up is this thing. For whatever reason, quite a few Sid plushes just are yellow, and I don't quite get it. It just looks ill. Though I will say this guy doesn't have lips, so that does instantly land him in my good graces. But on the other hand, those eyes are rather soulless. Might pick up for cheap. And next we have whatever this thing is. As you can see from the tag, it is from the Meltdown, so that makes me wonder if that's the original colour it was when the person who took this photo bought it, or if it's faded over time. But either way, it looks disgusting. I would not let this man inside my house, no matter what. The whole facial expression is just off, like with him just like looking up and his neck like twisted. It looks bootleg. Kill it with fire. 100% kill it with fire. Alright, and then we have this little keychain. I don't want to be too harsh on this one because it's not a regular plush. It'd be something a lot smaller and cheaper, so there's not really going to be a lot more intricacies in the design. However, I can't get over how round his head is, and once again we have the issue of the eyes just bulging out the top of the head. So where does that leave this guy? Might pick up for cheap. Definitely more than the reject Simpsons character next to it. Now this one is quite interesting because this is one of 2 Sid plushes that I actually used to own. So I kind of got to separate my nostalgia for it with how I feel about it and its design. The main thing that stands out to me about this one is, again, the eyes. Because they took a lot more effort to actually have the eyes look like they're connected to the face. Of all the Sid plushes we've looked at so far, this one definitely has the most accurate shaped head. I think he's a Tumblr sexy man. And then we have this Toys R Us exclusive Sid plush. Honestly, I think he looks pretty good. I think I'd need to see him from another angle because it does again have that issue of like looking up. But I mean, the proportions are all accurate. You know, it does have that cuteness factor and also it doesn't have lips. I think I'm gonna put this guy, I think he's quite friend-shaped. Yeah, things have been a bit positive for too long around here. So next we have whatever this thing is. I will say, as unsettling as that face is, I do like the way they've done his hair, because for a lot of other plushes they just have like this like shoelace type material just like hanging off the top of his head. This actually looks like just little strands of hair, which I do enjoy that. Nevertheless, it looks nothing like Sid, and that is why it has to go in Kill It With Fire. Though the previous sacrifice is still far worse. Next up, we have this guy, and I don't mind him too much. I'm not a huge fan of the bright yellow on his claws. It looks like he's wearing gloves and socks. But as far as the face goes, which is what I'm really looking for in a Sid plush, it's all there, you know? It's got a nose, 2 eyes, the little buck teeth. This is probably the best example I've seen so far of a Sid plush with lips, because it's not too invasive. You know, it's very subtle. It's just a nice little curve to make his smile. You know, it's a very, very pleasant looking chap, in my opinion. Putting aside some of the colouring choices, I think this guy's pretty friend-shaped. Honestly, probably the most fateful and cute Sid plush we've seen thus far. Though it might not hang on to that title for too long, because our next guy is also pretty adorable. I really like the pose they've got this guy in, because a lot of the other Sid plushes, when they're standing, it doesn't look right. You know, it gives me Mom Says It's My Turn on the Xbox vibes. But this guy, you know, he's just there, just living his life. Also, I really just like the colours they've chosen for this guy. It just really screams Sid to me. It gives off that, like, massive Sid energy. And this guy is going in... See, this is where it's difficult, because on one hand, I do like this guy more, but this one, like, feels more like Sid to me. I think we'll just go for the accuracy and put the other one first. For now, we might come back to it. Keeping with the Dawn of the Dinosaurs era, next we have this. See, this is what I'm talking about when it comes to the hair on Sid plushes, because like this guy right here, it's too thick. They look like eyebrows. It's disgusting. And maybe it's just the picture itself, but I am not a fan of how the textures of this plush look. Also, why does it have boobs? Like But that's not the only issue with this guy, because you also have those tiny, beady eyes that just sit there judging you for every mistake you've ever made in your entire life. I don't quite think it's Kill It With Fire bad, but I would definitely wash my hands as soon as I came into contact with it. And next up we have this Sid plush from Collision Course, which I can only describe as yassified Sid. I'm really not a fan of this guy, just like the bowling pin shape of it all. Yeah, Instagram model Sid is going in Kill It With Fire. Next up we have this Sid plush from Build-A-Bear. It's the first one we've seen that tries to go for this open mouth thing, and it looks terrifying. Like, this is my new sleep paralysis demon right here. But then you have the eyes, which are just massive, but they've got these tiny pupils, and it's unsettling to look at, really. And Kill It With Fire, but it's a very light Kill It With Fire. Like, it's nowhere near as bad as the other 3 in this category. Then we have this absolute Chad from Continental Drift. What were the choices that went into making this plush? Because it looks like they did not even try. The proportions of his limbs look so weird. It's like his arms and legs are barely even attached to his body. Not a fan of this guy. He's just got that face that says, I've killed before and will not hesitate to kill again. He absolutely belongs in Kill It With Fire. Now, the next one I'm a little conflicted on, because it has a lot of good things going for it and a lot of bad things going for it. Like, it clearly has the cuteness factor going for it, and all the colouring is very accurate. But on the other hand, that neck, it's just It just keeps going and going. And also, Sid is nowhere near that thin. Like, this guy looks very malnourished. Next up, we have the TY Sid plush from Dawn of the Dinosaurs. This is the one I previously mentioned that I got in America when the film came out. Safe to say I should have probably picked another character because this guy looks very unsettling. Also, in terms of having lips, this guy is the worst offender. I mean, just look at those things. Plush toys are not meant to have lips. If I did not have some kind of emotional attachment to this plush, I would pick it up for cheap. Though I do think it's a little better than this guy. Yeah. And now our next contender breaks a lot of the rules that we've already established as to what makes a good Sid plush and what makes a bad Sid plush. Yet somehow it kind of works. I mean, just look at this absolute creature. Its hair is way too thick, its eyes are bulging out the side of its head, it's got lips, its neck is way too long. The colours are nowhere near accurate. I mean, why are his claws white? But I don't know. It looks cute. I can't really explain why, it just does. It's quite adorable, to be frankly honest with you. I think this guy is absolutely a Tumblr sexy man, though probably on the lower end of that spectrum. Now, I want to try and prepare you guys for what I'm about to expose you to with this next plush, but there's nothing I can really say about it, so what is this? What is this? Why are the teeth separate from the mouth? It's called Tug and Talk Sid, so I'm guessing you pull his tongue and he speaks? That doesn't really explain why his neck and claws are made of plastic, which, you know, immediately removes the cuddle factor out of this. Like, that could be used as a defensive weapon. It's not cute, it looks nothing like Sid, and I am going to sleep with one eye open from now on. We're killing this one with fire. We are throwing it into the volcano. And now we have only one more Sid plush to look at. Thank God. Let me tell you, this guy has seen some shit. I do like the fact they've got this guy in kind of a little pose, and the way they've gone about actually detailing each of his claws rather than just have some stitching to, you know, like separate them. But I can't get over the fact this guy looks like he's on crack. Also, it looks like he's smirking rather than that typical, like, goofy Sid grin, so it just does not give me the essence of Sid's character. But at the same time, I don't really want to put it in Kill It With Fire, because it just looks so weird that I can't help but love it. Honestly, I'm putting it in the Tumblr Sexy Man category. And that was a definitive ranking of every single Sid plush from Ice Age that I was able to find on Google in the 10 minutes before I started filming this. We've taken a look at many Sid plushes over the past however long this segment is, but there can only be one winner, and it is this lovely gentleman right here. As I said, I just think this guy strikes the perfect balance between being cute, but also really getting the essence of Sid's character. The big dopey grin, the face is the perfect shape, the neck isn't too long, even though I'm still not a big fan of the fact it looks like he's wearing rubber gloves. And the worst Sid plush was this Eldritch Horror, which looks more like E.T. than Sid the Sloth. Once again, this has been another snack break, and now back to the retrospective. When thinking about what the next Ice Age movie could be, Blue Sky found themselves looking back to the very beginning, or about halfway through the very beginning. In the first movie, there's a scene in which the herd gets trapped in a cave and come across various things frozen in ice. This is where the initial inspiration for Dawn of the Dinosaurs came from, and now the team was once again returning to the very same place to think of some idea for the next installment. It just so happens that scene also features an alien spaceship, so it was decided for the next adventure the franchise would be taking to the stars. Well, sort of. And that's pretty much all there is to say on the production side of things. There are some other details, but I'll talk about those in the actual review. Ice Age Collision Course was released on July 22nd, 2016, where against a budget of $105 million, was able to make $408 in the worldwide box office. Now, those numbers are nothing to sneer at, but it is a dramatic drop from the previous movie, especially in North America where the film became a box office bomb, only garnering $64 million. This also made it Blue Sky's lowest performing film. I never saw Collision Course in theatres due to the, quite frankly, awful marketing. In fact, I didn't watch the film until late 2020 out of sheer curiosity, and it was not a pleasant experience. I found the film to be annoying, painfully unfunny, visually overstimulating, and just overall lacking any of the charm that I once loved about this franchise. But it's been a while since then, and I've definitely changed a lot as a person, so I want to give this film another chance. I mean, after how much I ended up loving Continental Drift, for all I know, this one's also a hidden gem. So, is there more to this one, or did Blue Sky fly too close to the sun? Let's take a look at the final film in the franchise, Ice Age 5 Collision Course. As you'll remember from the short/teaser, Scrat stumbles across an alien spaceship and is launched into space. Through a series of happenstance, he sends a giant meteor hurtling towards the Earth, creating a potential mass extinction event. But that's not important. What is important is that Peaches is getting married and wants to move away, much to Manny's anger. Meanwhile, Ellie's feeling her and Manny's marriage has reached a rough patch. Meanwhile, Diego and Shira discuss the possibility of having kids while dealing with the fact the other children of the valley are afraid of them. Meanwhile, Sid's girlfriend dumps him and he's feeling sorry for himself. Meanwhile, Buck returns to the surface to help stop the meteor and is followed by a family of dino poachers seeking revenge on him. They want to stop the herd from stopping the asteroid so they can be the sole survivors. Meanwhile, are you getting a sense of the problem here? This movie is overloaded with so many different storylines and character conflicts, and none of them are given room to breathe or be developed naturally. And that's only in the first 30 minutes. There's a whole other thing about a new group of characters/cult who have found the secret to eternal youth, and the sad part is, there are some creative ideas here, interesting new locations, world building. On paper, this all works. Just not when they're all haphazardly stapled together. And moving on to the characters, I really don't want to do this. This movie is able to take 14 years worth of character building and development and rip it to shreds. Either they've had all their humanity removed, or their worst aspects have been grossly amplified, or both. The voice actors are still clearly giving it their all, but it can't save the characters from feeling like shells of their former selves. Manny has lost every likable element of his personality, and I can no longer excuse his flanderization because of his tragic backstory from the first film. I could look past his worrying in the third movie and him being a textbook overprotective dad in the fourth, but I am drawing the line here. Simply put, it's not fun to watch Manny anymore because I don't want him to win. This isn't about him being worried over his daughter and struggling to let go, that thing he got over in the previous movie. This is him being creepily possessive of Peaches.
What if?
Ooh, I know. We destroy the relationship, right? That way we never have to let her go, and she'll just stay our little girl forever!
No, you psychopath!
Then, to make matters worse, he is so awful that he ends up dragging Ellie down to his level as she too plots and schemes as to how they can manipulate their daughter. It's honestly kind of amazing how this movie fixes one of my biggest criticisms with Continental Drift, as Ellie has a defined and major role here, only for the writing to completely ruin her entire character. And this turn for Manny and Ellie leads to them becoming a burden for the rest of the herd on this life or death mission, which isn't great. Now, there is one really good moment where, because of the whole end of the world thing, Ellie and Manny reflect on their lives together, which finally lets them see they need to let Peaches go. And it's nicely paced, wonderfully acted, and actually gives enough time for the emotions to set in. One of the few great moments in the film. And speaking of Peaches, she's fine. Pretty much the same as she was in the previous movie, just a little older and slightly more wise. She has some fun moments and serves her purpose to the story. This also applies to her fiancé, Julian, voiced by Adam Devine. I will say, while individually these two aren't all that interesting, I think their relationship and how it's portrayed is one of the film's strong points. I simply can't get enough of couples who are endlessly supportive and open with each other, and they fit the bill. Now you'll notice how for the first time I talked about Ellie and Peaches before I went into Sid and Diego. And that's because in this movie, the herd doesn't feel like a herd. It's so focused on Manny, Ellie, Peaches, and Julian that it kind of forgets everyone is supposed to be part of this family. There are no defining herd moments like there had been in every other previous film. There's merely some shots where they all happen to be in the same vicinity. Though what few interactions we do get between Manny, Sid, and Diego are okay. Sid is a complete joke. And I don't mean he's comic relief. I mean for most of this movie, Sid's role is to be the universe's stress ball. He's lost every shred of dignity and charm and is relegated to a walking punchline. Later on in the movie, when he starts a relationship with Brooke, voiced by Jessie J, it comes out of nowhere and in the context of this movie, isn't really all that earned. But after getting invested in Sid's storyline over the rest of the franchise, it was nice to see him get a happy ending. Now I have no clue how they did this, but this movie somehow makes Crash and Eddie worse. Because they're not only there to be annoying distractions to appeal to kids, now their main role is to cause problems for the other characters due to their stupidity. And then we have Buck. Now, make no mistake, Buck is still the best thing about this movie. But oh sweet Mike, what did they do to him? The writers seem to think what worked about Buck in Dawn of the Dinosaurs was his random non sequiturs, so that's what he's reduced to here. He's just so over the top all the time, and it gets exhausting. The charm of Buck in Dawn was because of Simon Pegg's performance, even the most mundane and unfunny material was entertaining. Here they're trying to make him this crazy, unpredictable character, and it impedes on Pegg's performance because he's not allowed a lot of range with his acting. And hold on, because I'm about to explain the joke. There's a running gag in this film where Buck treats a pumpkin like it's a baby, and basically adopts it, which reminded me of this moment from Dawn of the Dinosaurs.
Buck, when exactly did you lose your mind?
3 months ago. I woke up one morning married to a pineapple. An ugly pineapple. But I loved her.
The reason one works and one doesn't is because the pineapple line is played mostly straight. The comedy comes from how nonchalant he is about the situation, which makes the middle part where it suddenly gets very intense catch you off guard and in turn be hilarious. But the line also says something about Buck's character. There's self-awareness to it, how even he recognises how strange it was, citing it as the point where he lost his mind. This is just Buck making baby talk to a pumpkin. What is the joke here? The only characters who haven't been ruined here are Granny, because she didn't really have much going on to begin with, just being there for occasional one-liners, She-Ra, because despite being on the journey she barely has any lines in this film, and Diego. Since Ellie has now gotten hit by the stupid stick, Diego reclaims his role as the smart, level-headed one of the herd, and is pretty much there to solve everyone else's problems and be one of the most proactive characters. Sure, it's not a whole lot, but I'm thankful they didn't find some way to mess him up too. They try and give him an arc with She-Ra, but it only shows up at the beginning and end of the film with no development in between. I can only presume it's because, unlike Manny and Ellie, they understand their personal issues can be put on hold while they're trying to save the world so they don't end up inconveniencing everyone else and jeopardizing the mission. There's other characters, but outside of who they're voiced by, there's not much to them. There's the Dino family, who have their own interpersonal storyline in which the emotionally abusive parent is forgiven for doing one good thing at the very end. The leader of the cult is voiced by Jesse Tyler Ferguson from Modern Family fame. That's it. Back in Cosmic Scratastrophe, I started talking about the animation and said I'd expand on it here. And we're going to do exactly that, but beforehand, I want to make it clear I am not saying the animation is bad, nor was it by any means lazy, but I have some serious problems with how this film looks. It's mainly to do with the character animation. Dear Lord, is this film hyperactive. Every second something has to be moving, and it reaches a point where the visual comedy stops leaving an impact. Because of how quick a lot of the movements are, the characters sometimes feel like they have no weight to them, which is especially noticeable with the mammoths. It's so strange to criticize cartoony animation, but I think they went a little too far in this regard. Don't get me wrong, it's technically impressive, and at certain points it works, but other times it gives the impression the characters have no bones and are just blobs of flesh. You may have noticed I didn't talk about Scrat in the character section. Well, that's because I was saving it for here. I don't like any of the Scrat stuff in this movie simply because I find the constant graphic violence he's put through more uncomfortable than funny. The detailed and realistic textures don't exactly help in this regard. We've been working our way up to it for a while now, but we are now at a point where Scrat is more of a detriment to these films than a benefit. Now, there is one scene where this all works. When we get our reintroduction to Bug, there's this jaw-droppingly gorgeous scene where he tries to retrieve a stolen egg from the poachers while delivering a rendition of Figaro's aria, and it's all done in one continuous shot that goes on for around 2 minutes. This one scene took almost the entire production to complete, as due to its complexity, the crew were only able to produce a few seconds of it per week. It really is a stunning sequence and one of the best of the franchise, and I'm going to try and talk about it for as long as I can just so I can keep showing you more of it. Let's move on to the humour, which fares a little better than everything else, though not by too much. There's still a lot of great jokes in this film. They're just sprinkled in between a lot more bad ones. Maybe about 1/3 of the comedy in this movie is solid. The rest is toilet humour, pop culture references where the joke is just thing exists, and characters acting out of character for the sake of, bet you never thought you'd see them do this. And the sad thing is, a lot of the good stuff is in the first 20 minutes. The opening scenes had a lot of funny moments, but as the film stumbles onward, I started to forget how much I was enjoying it at the start. The movie is so focused on throwing as many jokes at you as possible and constantly moving a mile a minute that it never allows for a moment to be a moment. Like, there's a fake out death scene with Buck about partway through, but because the film refuses to have even a second without someone talking, it falls flat because it doesn't feel like an emotional moment. It feels like a setup for a joke. If this was in any of the previous films, there would be a pause where everyone looks shocked, followed by a swell of sad music, then they can start talking. Instead, what we get is this.
He's gone. I can't believe it.
Don't know how we'll go on without you, Buck. All right, let's go.
No time for the characters to react or have some actual emotion like a moment of denial. It's just explosion, sword, well, guess he's dead. Let's talk about something I did really enjoy about this film. The music. Okay, there's a lot of unnecessary pop music, but talking specifically about the original score, it is so damn good. Despite John Powell not being able to return for the film, John Debney, the new composer, did the smart thing and alongside bringing back a lot of Powell's compositions from the third film, even included a few pieces of David Newman's score from the first film, which was a really pleasant surprise. So even if the movie itself doesn't feel like a send-off, at least the music gives an impression of things coming full circle, especially during the final scene which incorporates a few different themes from the first film. For how many problems Collision Course has, the ending does work, and at least brings some sense of closure to the franchise had this been the end. And I don't just mean the music, though that might be part of the reason I got so emotional during it. Manny and Ellie let Peaches go in a very well done scene, and then they walk her down the aisle, and there's this beautiful panning shot of the rest of the herd that ends on Diego and Sid. Then there's a forced and awkward dance party just so they could get an original song out of Jessie J's casting, because we couldn't let this film end without destroying whatever dignity this franchise had left. I'll admit it, this film was better than I remembered. Even though I still really didn't enjoy it for what it did to most of the characters and how off-putting I found the animation at points, I did come away with a few things to really appreciate about it, mainly in its music and voice acting. It's just a shame how it all ended up, because had the characters been portrayed a little better, I could easily see myself loving this film and standing before you all today telling you it's severely underrated. But sadly, that's not the world we live in. And for a few good years, that was the end of Ice Age. There were talks about another sequel around the same time as Collision Course's release, but that died down soon after. No new films announced, no new Scrat short, no anything. Of course, the franchise was never going to completely go away, but at least for the time being, it was on some kind of hiatus, which was honestly the best thing for it. You know, give it a few years off, let things cool down, wait until people start to really miss the franchise, and then come back with a vengeance. Unfortunately, we'll never know if that's what Blue Sky was planning, because their days were numbered. Y'all know where this is going. In March of 2019, Disney purchased 20th Century Fox Studios for $52.4 billion. Now, there were clearly several key reasons why this acquisition took place. Disney wanted to get the X-Men and Fantastic Four in the MCU, and they wanted the Simpsons and the Avatar franchises. And since there was no way Fox would ever give those up willingly, and they were Disney, they just decided to buy the whole lot, including Blue Sky. Following the merger, Disney began restructuring the entire company, selling off assets that weren't of use to them, removing the Fox branding as much as they possibly could, closing studios, laying off employees, and cancelling projects in development. This included shakeups when it came to Blue Sky's leadership. On December 5th, 2019, Blue Sky released Spies in Disguise, a movie that, while it has some problems, mostly being yet another animated movie in which a POC main character gets turned into an animal, was a fast-paced, engaging spy thriller with a lot of heart and wonderful voice performances. It's hands down my favourite non-Ice Age movie from Blue Sky, and I really hoped the film would grow into another big franchise for them. Sadly, most likely to being released around the same time as Frozen 2, it was a box office disappointment, likely not seeing a profit. Things were quiet after that. Sure, Blue Sky was still working on things, mainly an adaptation of the comic Nimona, but nothing was really being announced. And then 2020 happened, and 2020 turned into 2021. Despite animation being practically the only creative industry that wasn't completely halted in its tracks, the year would still see massive layoff, cuts, and cancellations across all major companies. And in February, Disney announced that they were closing down Blue Sky in April of that year, cancelling all in-development films and seizing control of all their IP as part of the Disney brand. Now, I wasn't too surprised by the news. I mean, the last Blue Sky movie to be successful domestically was the Peanuts movie in 2015. The writing had been on the wall for a while now, and I imagine Disney were looking for a reason to dissolve the studio basically since acquiring it. Because what was the point of keeping 3 theatrical animation studios running, especially when one of them used to be a competitor? And despite creating some of the most original and innovative animated films of the previous 2 decades, Blue Sky was not beloved by the general public. Let's be real. As sad as Blue Sky's closing was, no one cared about Blue Sky until after they announced it was over. And even then, the only people protesting it were people in the animation industry and animation fans. Simply put, Disney closed down Blue Sky because they knew they could get away with it. They shouldn't have been able to, but the cards Blue Sky had been dealt made it all too easy. Now, that should be the end. But the one thing Disney saw value in from Blue Sky was Ice Age, and as of right now, it is the only property from the studio they've continued. And I've been putting this off because I have some idea of what we're about to go through. We just saw Disney kill Blue Sky. Now we're about to watch them take what was once the beating heart of the studio and drag it through the mud. But before that, I think we could do with one more little snack break. And now, during the production of this video, I've gone back to my parents' house on a few occasions, and every time I've come across more and more of my old Ice Age toys. So I'm going to talk about those as well as a few other things I found more recently. Hello and welcome to my floor. This is the final snack break of the video. It's also the final thing I'm recording for the video in general, and I am filming this when it is almost 11 PM on the night before I am supposed to put this out on Patreon, so you can tell just how down to the wire this whole thing really was. As Past Me just said, in this section I'm going to be talking more about some of my old Ice Age toys, as well as a few other things I came across in the wild more recently. We'll start with the things I came across more recently because I have a lot less to say about them. So a while ago, during one of my regular charity shop runs in which I look for rare or interesting Disney memorabilia, I came across two very interesting items. Those being some Ice Age tins from the Meltdown. And the interesting thing about those is these were exclusive to the cinemas when the film came out. What is in these things, if I can even get it open at all, there we go. So what's in these things is these really weird colouring pages that feature like these kind of ugly versions of the characters. But that's not all that comes in this, no. We also get some official Ice Age 2 pencils. Ooh. We also have an Ice Age 2 pencil sharpener. And then we've also got some Ice Age 2 stickers. And the interesting thing about these Ice Age 2 stickers, and really just these whole tins in general, if I can just... And the interesting thing about those stickers, and really these tins in general, is despite the fact they are obviously from the Meltdown, as you can see it says Ice Age 2, these are so obviously like renders of the characters from the first film's promotional art. But yeah, you know, cool little find. They only cost me like 50p each, so you know, I'm not going to complain. Now, on my regular gallivants around town, I usually go into this used electronics shop, and the reason that I've gone there a lot of the times in the past is because I've been looking for the original DVD release of Oliver & Company. So I went there for months, and every time I was looking, I was going to the top floor because that's where all the DVDs were, and I was looking around and it was all just adult films, you know, it was just like horror movies, adult comedies, there was no animated films anywhere to be seen. Until a few weeks ago, when I realised that they're not upstairs, they're at the back of the bottom floor. So they did always have Oliver & Company, and I was just too dumb to look there. But along with Oliver & Company, I also got two more interesting Ice Age DVDs. So first up, I have this double pack of the first and second film. And what's really interesting about this is this was actually the original way I got the first two movies. So the ones that you've seen in the background of the entire video up to this point, this is what they originally came in. But I didn't keep the box because I was a dumb kid who didn't think the box had any value at the time. But yeah, it's nice just having this again, and even just, you know, I guess, spare versions of the films. But the other thing I found, and quite possibly the coolest, was this. This is the Extreme Cool 2-disc special edition of the first Ice Age movie. And I was really surprised to see this because I have never seen a 2-disc special edition for an animated movie that wasn't by Disney. So as you can see, it's got like this really like shiny 3D case that's all like, you know, fancy. It's got some original art of Sid on the back. It's got down here a sneak peek at robots. And if I open it up... A whole new way to watch. Extreme Cool View. Combines the movie with Scrat's frozen fun facts about the real Ice Age, gets scene-specific behind-the-ice video interviews with the filmmakers, and actual Ice Age experts while you're watching the movie. So that'd be a cool way to rewatch the first movie. You know, when this video was like long in the past and watching things from this franchise no longer brings me pain. Next up we have my Burger King Scrat toy. I talked a little bit about this when I was going over the marketing for the Meltdown, and this is a very awkward shot, but so there he is, and like this is all he does. Just chatters his teeth like that. So there was a good few months where this was my favourite toy, And it wasn't even when I got it, which was 2006 when the Meltdown came out. It was actually around the time of Dawn of the Dinosaurs premiere. And one time I took it with me to like an indoor play place, and I lost it in the ball pit. And I spent like the next 20 minutes frantically looking for it and just having a complete like just mental breakdown and hysteria over the fact I've lost my favourite toy. Thankfully, you know, someone who was in there with me was able to find it. Not someone I knew, just a random stranger found it, thank God. And yeah, we were reunited, but that's just an interesting tidbit and the first thing I think of when I look at this guy. Everyone say thank you to my parents for putting up with this for a few months. Now, I went looking for the rest of my McDonald's toys from Dawn of the Dinosaurs, but unfortunately I still can't find Diego or Mama T-Rex. However, I did find two more. The first being Scratette, if I can just get her up there. Yeah, so there's Scratette. She's got fully posable arms and legs, and like the main feature of this toy is just... yeah, it just does that. That's everything. How enriching... oh, dear God. How enriching for a child. And the other one, the one I'm most excited about, is my book toy. And the reason that I'm really excited to show you guys this guy is because he still works. And I really wish that I got it on camera when I, like, figured it out. Because if I just turn him on... like, that is so obviously not Simon Pegg. Like, it sounds absolutely nothing like him. But, no, it's just... it's crazy to think that, you know, from 2009, so we're talking, like, 12, 13 years ago, and it still works. It's still got all its batteries and everything. And the funny thing is, this is probably the toy I use the most. Then two more little things is, I found some of my Kinder Surprise toys from Dawn of the Dinosaurs. I did once have the whole set, but now all I was able to find was the book. And this Sid that is, missing its base. But on to the main event of this segment. Now, if you remember way back when I was talking about the Meltdown, I mentioned how when I was a kid, I had this Meltdown playset. But when my family moved house in 2013, it ended up in one of the boxes and I hadn't really seen it since. Well, I went looking and... I found it. And with it, I found the rest of my old Mattel Ice Age toys. So, starting off with, oh dear, Ellie and Manny right here. Really cool little figures. You know, definitely, bit of wear and tear over the years. I got most of these, probably for Christmas. I do remember, like, getting quite a few of these figures for Christmas. The playset, though, wasn't for Christmas. The playset was just something that I got just because I was 5 years old and the world was simpler back then and I could get anything I wanted just by asking for it. Then we also have this Manny, which is different from the previous one because you can actually move its trunk. Hey, look at that. It's pretty cool if you ask me. Do you guys remember at the beginning of the Meltdown, that female sloth that Sid hits on and is in the movie for like maybe 3 seconds at most? Well, she got a very own figure. Maybe she had a bigger part in a much earlier draft of the movie, but she's here. And then we've just got this weird monkey thing that, you know, wasn't even in the movie. Maybe it's like a character that was cut or something. Now, I didn't just bring this out just to show you, hey, look at all these cool things from my childhood. Because when I found this playset, obviously my first instinct is, I want to see if it still works. So I tried it. And, it wasn't really working. Like, everything was there, but, like, oh dear. When I was pressing the button to actually get it to go, it wasn't making it all the way around the loop. And about the third time I tried it, the rubber band that is the only thing that actually, like, pushes this thing forward snapped. But then I realised, what would be a better way to end this segment than by trying to renovate and fix this old vintage Ice Age playset? So, I bought some rubber bands. So, if I can just get this to work, I will be so happy. Okay, so I think, like, the band goes on there. then it goes around this, maybe? Let's give it a shot. Okay, okay, that feels, okay. Just put the bottom back on, just so I don't injure myself with, like, things flying everywhere or possibly, like, damage my screens. Here we go. Moment of truth, guys. 3, 2, 1. So, this little ice board with this SID attached to it is meant to launch off this. Go around this loop, over this ramp, and through this tree. Because what happens when it goes through this tree is... Hold on. It's a bit old, in case you can't tell. Sometimes it doesn't want to work right. Okay, there we go. Alright. And what happens when it goes through this tree is... ice falls out. Moment of truth. I am putting SID on the board. 3, 2, 1.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it.
That is exactly what it did when I got it out of storage. That is how far SID was able to make it before just falling straight back down. So it's clear that the tension of the rubber band isn't strong enough to get it to go fast enough where it can give enough force to launch SID to go actually around the ramp. Ugh. This is learning physics with Jake. So, okay, let's get this off. Okay, right. So I think the issue is that I went for the smallest rubber band, when I think what we actually need to do is go for one that's one of the ones that's like medium-sized, and try and like wrap it around that twice, because I feel like that's going to give it enough tension to, you know, actually send it forward. We are loading SID. Ooh, that does feel good. It feels like very strong, very tense. Alright. 3, 2, 1. Okay, he made it further that time. Let's just try it with just the board and see how that fares. You guys just saw that, right? Let's give that another shot. Okay. It's just a case of if I can get SID through, which is, you know, kind of the whole point of the toy. Let's try this again. Let me see if I can get this on a flat surface. So like, I guess I'll try and like make a flat surface in this room. Yeah, okay, that might be a bit better. The Ice Age DVD game, finally coming in handy. Okay, that might be an issue. So in the commercial you guys saw, there's like this little section right here, which is supposed to have these little doors on it. And the idea is that you put these doors in, you would press that button, and then it would release the purple sea monster. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, this door no longer actually goes in, and this guy doesn't actually want to slot into place. So I've got to find something to try and, like, bind it down. There? Okay, alright, that, kind of worked. It's in there. Let's see how this goes now. Okay, here we go. Alright, SID. Come on, I've got a lot riding on this SID. My pride. No, that's pretty much it, just my pride. Alright, don't fail me now. Come on.
I can't believe my flipping eyes.
You guys saw that, right? It actually just worked. I mean, it didn't activate the ice, but... holy shit! Okay, I think there's something happening around this area that I'm missing. Screw it. We're moving to the living room. I am determined to do this. Hello there, and welcome to the living room, aka where I should have done this entire segment from the beginning because this is a much comfier position, where I am continuing to prove I am going insane by trying the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Let's go. Okay, now we're on a flat surface. Maybe we have a chance. Here we go, Sid. Sid kind of activated the ice. That was kind of a win. We're gonna go for 7 more minutes. Basically until this version of the recording gets to 10 minutes long. Maybe it's because the ramp itself is called... He did a flip. Lesson from this. Maybe the toys from our childhood aren't as good as we thought they were. Let me take out the ramp. I just want to try something here. Alright, you all didn't see that. But it was literally, he went around, he got to the tree, and he just went straight down. I think the tree itself might be the issue. Through the tree. Through the tree. Final attempts. Let's just bring the ramp back into it for the hell of it, because it's not going to happen. But you know. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I feel like that's the closest he's going to get. Am I disappointed that I was not able to get it to fully work? Yes, of course I am. You know, pretty bummed, not just because it doesn't make for very interesting content, but also it is kind of hard to accept that one of my favourite childhood toys no longer really works. But at the same time, you know, it's in a lot better condition than I originally thought. We were able to mostly repair it, and hey, you know, the real fun part of it is getting Sid to go around the loop. But I feel the only appropriate way to end this would be to remove all the obstacles in our path and send Sid to his doom. Okay, let's do this. Before the Disney buyout, Fox announced they were developing a television spin-off centered entirely around Buck, which was an incredibly promising concept, because Buck was one of the last things the franchise still had going for it. Sadly, this would not come to pass, as in December 2020, during Disney Investor Day, it was announced that the project had been greenlit as a Disney Plus original movie titled The Ice Age Adventures of Buck Wild. They announced that Simon Pegg would reprise his role as Buck, which was fantastic news. Then it all began to quickly unravel, starting with the confirmation that the film was not being made by Blue Sky. In fact, outside of Laurie Forte producing it, Blue Sky had no involvement with this film whatsoever, as they were busy at the time with something else that we'll circle back to. Instead, the animation of this film was given to Bardell Entertainment in Vancouver. A trailer would release on the 4th of January 2022, and with it came the revelation that Simon Pegg was the only actor to reprise his role. That means Ray Romano, John Leguizamo, Dennis Leary, Queen Latifah, Sean William Scott, and Josh Peck were all replaced. So, just to recap, this is an Ice Age film not made by Blue Sky that replaces almost the entire established cast of the franchise and simply didn't look good. I don't know how to describe it other than it's like looking at a cutscene from an early PS3 game. Ice Age The Adventures of Buck Wild released on Disney Plus in late January, where it maybe did okay, maybe it failed. Streaming numbers are hard to quantify because companies don't really give out that much data. The point is, it came out, maybe it was viewed a lot in its first week, but then it quickly fell into obscurity. This one section has been what has mostly held this video back for so long, because actually getting myself to sit down and watch this film was, no joke, one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. Ice Age is one of my favourite franchises, and the thought of seeing Disney turn it into such a shameless cash grab was almost too much for me to handle. And so I put off watching the movie for a few weeks. Even when it got past the point in which I originally wanted to get this video out, I still couldn't do it. I needed something to motivate me, and then I realised my hair. For over a year now, I've been trying various things with my hair to find something that feels like, well, me. And recently I think I found it with this sort of pushed back look. The only issue is, the longer my hair gets, the harder it is to get it to stay in that shape. So a while ago, I decided I was not going to let myself get my hair cut until I finished this damn video, knowing full well it would eventually become completely ungovernable and I would have no choice but to watch the film. And since I'm recording this, you can imagine I did finally crack under the pressure. So let's take a look at the spin-off that should have never been, so we can move on with our lives and never have to think about it ever again. I'm gonna need more to drink. The story this time is about Crash and Eddie. Oh goody. They're tired of Ellie always telling them what to do and not letting them get killed. And after Manny dares them to strike it out on their own, they leave the herd, eventually ending up in the Lost World and reuniting with Buck, who has his own problems. You see, this hyper-intelligent dino called Orson has returned from exile and plots to take over the Lost World and make it a place for only dinos. Because there's now a population of mammals who live here beside Buck, which was never mentioned before and really takes the whole lost part out of the Lost World. Yep, it's one of those fantasy racism stories. You know, the ones that try and address the topic through thinly veiled metaphors involving non-humans, allowing the writers to talk about racism and prejudice without having to address the real systemic issues behind them. So it ends up being far more problematic than progressive, and trivialises the problem to a point where almost nothing it has to say can actually be applied to real life. Yeah, those kind of stories. Along the way, we learn Buck has a tragic backstory as he reunites with an old frenemy, Crash and Eddie are useless and annoying until the very end, and occasionally we cut back to the rest of the herd looking for them. Let's get it out of the way. The animation is not good. Well, for the most part. Some of the backgrounds do look nice, especially when they do an establishing shot of the Lost World, which is the only time where the film somewhat recaptures the magic of Dawn of the Dinosaurs. Though the character animation drags down the whole experience. It's trying to be fast-paced and energetic like the main films, but it really only works with Buck, and even then, only sometimes. Everything else moves so robotic and sluggishly, even more than the first Ice Age. In fact, I'd say that film looks more visually appealing because the textures match the quality of the animation. Here, the fur on the characters somehow looks incredibly detailed but also has a really low resolution, and the end result is it just looks off-putting, especially whenever the film does a close-up, which it does a lot. Now, rather than giving each of the returning characters their own section, we're going to lump most of them together. As previously mentioned, everyone aside from Buck was recast, and while they do a fine job replicating the spirit of the original performances, these iconic and beloved characters now feel they are lacking their souls and have somehow been flanderized even further to a point where they can be summed up in one word. Sid is annoying, Manny is a grouch, Diego is violent, Ellie is a nag.
Let's do the nag dance! You nag it to the left, you nag it to the right. I always nag my husband all day and night.
There is almost no sense of love between them, as their scenes consist of them arguing, threatening each other, and simply being not fun to spend time with. They've become your average sitcom family that hate each other. So when the movie reaches its climax and they suddenly start doing the "we are family" moments, it doesn't feel justified. And while I said the replacement voice actors do a great job, there are exceptions. If they're only speaking, it's passable. But whenever they have to give these big reactions, it stops sounding like the characters entirely. No offense to Jake Green, I'm sure he's a fine guy and has done spectacular in other roles, but listening to someone try and imitate John Leguizamo's iconic Sid scream hurts me. The best replacement is Skylar Stone as Diego, and that's mostly because he has like 5 lines in the entire film. So I guess I can't fault the movie too much, as it does at least keep the tradition of Diego not having anything substantial to do. We'll talk about Crash and Eddie towards the end, but now I want to focus on Buck. Despite Simon Pegg being the only actor to reprise his role, and while he is still doing great, I found a lot of his performance underwhelming. It's as if they only gave him one take for each of his lines because some of the delivery here sounds off.
Mayday! Mayday! We're coming in hot!
But personality-wise, Buck remains the most unscathed. Then there's the new characters, starting with Z, a striped Zorilla who challenges Scrat for the title of the worst female design in the entire franchise. She was once a member of Buck's team, because that's a thing that apparently happened, until they split up due to tragedy, and now she's back to help Buck, argue with Buck, and not be funny. I will say her voice actress, Justina Mercado, does a nice job of making her likeable and bringing some nice emotion to the scenes that call for it, but it's really hard to stand out when you're acting alongside Simon Pegg. Then there's Orson, who the film tries to present as this big threat and worthy adversary to Buck, but ultimately I found him pathetic and very generic, especially stacked up against Rudy, Captain Gut, and even Soda. By the way, Rudy is never mentioned in this film, and we never learn what happened to him. And that's pretty much all the characters. Now I'm sure you've noticed a certain someone missing from this lineup, an essential piece of this franchise's identity that has been suspiciously omitted. This movie doesn't feature any appearance from Scrat, not even a cameo, and I have a certain theory as to why. Well, 2 actually. Theory number 1. The people making this movie did not have the confidence to animate Scrat and his madcap shenanigans with their budget. Or they just couldn't think of a story for him / way for him to accidentally cause the main plot, because that's apparently all he's good for these days. Theory 2. They weren't allowed to use Scrat because another studio in the company was. Something we've learned in recent years is that Disney have bizarre rules where only certain branches of the company are allowed to use specific characters at any given time. The example I constantly go back to, and the one that frustrates me the most, is the crew of DuckTales 2017 not being allowed to do their original plan for Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers because of the 2022 movie being in development. So they actually had to sneak in their cameo under the executives until it was too late to change things, simply calling Gadget Labmouse in the script and storyboards. I think it's entirely possible the people making this movie wanted to include Scrat, but weren't able to because of another project that was currently being made at the same time. Then we have the issue with the timeline. The movie opens with a nice recap of the entire story up to that point, encapsulating all 5 movies including Continental Drift and Collision Course. From there, the movie is in this weird place where it's trying to have a bunch of callbacks and consistent continuity with the previous films, yet despite it taking place after Collision Course, Buck is still living in the Lost World, and neither Peaches, She-Ra, nor Brooke appear or even receive a mention in this film. Also, the whole thing with Orson is he is the only dinosaur who can talk, which surprises the other characters, even though this isn't anything new for them. The conclusion I've come to is the writers of this film saw the first 2 movies, a few scenes from Dawn of the Dinosaurs, and read the IMDb synopsis for Continental Drift and Collision Course. The only thing about this movie I enjoyed wholeheartedly without any drawbacks was, you guessed it, the music. Despite yet another new composer taking the mantle, the background score remains powerful, with it still including all the themes from the previous movies. I'd be willing to bet the few scenes I actually enjoyed in this movie were purely due to the emotional attachment I have to these compositions, but they're still great. Now, the ending of this movie was something that really caught me off guard in a good way, and made me respect it far more than I would otherwise. After defeating Orson and proving they can actually be capable individuals, Crash and Eddie decide to stay in the Lost World with Buck and Z. There's quite an emotional goodbye with the rest of the herd that would have been impactful had it been with the original cast, and they go their separate ways. Then the film commits. They don't have Crash and Eddie change their mind at the last minute. They stay down there. And this was kind of a running theme with the final projects of the herd kind of splintering off. Of course, Manny, Sid, Diego, and Ellie will always be together, but Collision Course saw both Peaches and Granny move away, and now with this movie, we see the exit of Crash and Eddie, two characters that have been part of the franchise for the previous 16 years. To see them go in that direction and have the balls to stick to it, I really wasn't expecting it. Especially after the film kind of made Crash and Eddie engaging characters. There are some things to like about this movie, and it's not even the worst thing the franchise has to offer. I mean, the Christmas special was far more painful to sit through, but I just can't get over the circumstances surrounding it and what it represents. You know that classic movie Weekend at Bernie's? The one about two guys who, through various wacky circumstances, have to puppet around the corpse of their boss and convince people he's still alive? If you haven't seen it, you definitely know of it, as many TV shows have done an homage to it over the years. The Adventures of Buck Wild reminds me of Weekend at Bernie's. Not because it directly references it, but because what we're seeing here is Disney parading around with the dead body of the Ice Age franchise and trying to convince people it's still alive after they're the ones who killed it. This movie has no soul to speak of, because maintaining it would have been too expensive, which is why none of the main stars of the franchise reprised their roles. And this is Disney. They could have absolutely gotten them all back very easily. The reason they didn't is because they simply didn't care about this film, the franchise, or Blue Sky's legacy. This travesty of a sequel reeks of corporate cynicism and trying to cash in on a beloved IP as cheaply as possible. And the fact it does have a few good scenes and took some creative risks that paid off almost makes it worse, because you just wish that stuff had been in a real Ice Age movie. So that was a mess, and now we have only one more Ice Age project to talk about, and thankfully we're ending on a much more positive, if bittersweet note. On February 22nd, 2022, on Blue Sky's 35th anniversary, and coincidentally over a year after Disney announced that they were shutting the studio down, they announced a brand new series of shorts starring Scrat, creatively titled Scrat Tales, which would focus on the former studio mascot as he journeys into fatherhood. What really got people's attention though was the fact these shorts were made by Blue Sky. In fact, they were the final thing ever made by Blue Sky. Well, before Netflix revived Nimona at least. The announcement completely blindsided most people because this was almost a year since the studio shut down, and then Disney revealed that there was still a finished project that hadn't been released yet, and fittingly enough, it was a series dedicated to their most popular creation. Scrat Tales was released on April 13th, 2022, exclusively to Disney+. And while once again streaming numbers are hard to properly gauge, the series became the first Ice Age project in over a decade to receive generally positive critical reviews, praising its humour, visuals, and music. Well, we made it this far. I guess it's finally time to see just how this whole thing ends, as we take a look at Scrat Tales. Woo! Sorry, I had to. This is so stupid. Scrat Tales consists of 6 shorts, following our little genetic disaster as he adopts a baby saber-toothed squirrel called Baby Scrat. But now he must fight against his obsession with chasing the acorn and the love for his new child, in the process turning Baby Scrat into Baby Scrat, as the two now attempt to fight and outsmart each other so they can get to the acorn first. It's nice how they treated these like the classic Scrat shorts, with the zany music and title cards. I also don't mind the modern references here, because when it comes to the classic Scrat shorts, they exist in a different plane of reality than the films. If time travel can exist, lo-fi beats to study and relax to can as well. Them's the rules. It feels weird saying this after so many of my criticisms of the later films revolved around Scrat, but it's lovely just getting to see this guy again, even if I only saw Collision Course like a week ago. I imagine the impact it would have had I not seen Scrat since 2016. Despite my issues with his later appearances, Scrat is a necessary part of the Ice Age formula, and his omission was one of the previous film's biggest failings. And it's simply nice seeing the character presented in this way. We've spent the last 20 years watching him be the universe's punching bag, so to see him be treated with at least a little kindness and have these wholesome moments of interacting with his adopted child, it's really sweet. But when he is being malicious or cruel, it still works because it's Scrat. The rules of the universe that, I'll remind you, he created state that he can never win, even when he's the one getting scammed. Scrat has been completely redesigned from the ground up, as the series is animated with Pixar RenderMan. Ironic that the studio Fox was using to copy Pixar is now using their software. But because of this, Scrat looks better than he has in a long time. He just feels more fully formed, but it's still the same Scrat we all know and love. And it's all simply beautiful. Look at this lighting, look at these expressions, it's all just fantastic. And I'm happy to see these shorts are nowhere near as hyperactive as Collision Course. They have a far slower natural pace to them with actual atmosphere that doesn't feel a need to be constantly moving. The last place I would expect to find some actual subtlety in this franchise again, but I'm delighted to see it. And because of that, the slapstick actually works here. It's not a very complex series that will make you emotional, aside from perhaps the nostalgia of it all. The main things this series wants to be is very cute and kinda funny, and it accomplishes those in spades. I still think Scrat peaked with the Meltdown, but I had a great time with these shorts and seeing this franchise get treated with the care and reverence it deserved, even if it's likely for the final time. Though what people didn't see coming was that there was in fact a finale to the series that also acts as a Blue Sky send-off. The same day the series dropped on Disney+, a Blue Sky employee uploaded a video to YouTube simply titled The End. It was done by a few Blue Sky animators who decided to make it to give the studio a proper send-off on their own terms. And I don't really think I can say anything about it, so just watch. And that's everything. While there have been rumblings of future Disney-led Ice Age productions, for now, this is where the story ends. But hey, at least it's sort of an uplifting note to go out on. When I first began conceptualizing this video, and when I started making it, I thought it was just going to be something simple, where I tell you the first 3 films are pretty good, Continental Drift is meh, and everything after was a raging dumpster fire. When what I found is that this franchise is nowhere near as simple as I, and I'm sure a lot of other people, would think. Because those first 4 movies have a quality of storytelling I would easily put on par with things like Toy Story or Kung Fu Panda. And after revisiting each of them with a critical eye, I think Ice Age might be my favourite animated franchise ever. The attention to detail it had when it came to the growth of its characters, how Sid and Manny both go through these grand, expansive arcs that allow them to reconcile with their trauma and find happiness in their new weird but loving family, and how each of those relationships progress from film to film. Ellie's journey of self-discovery and Diego's... Okay, well, Diego didn't really do much outside of the first film, but I still love him. The original ending of this video was going to be a discussion on if, after everything that's happened, we can still salvage anything from this franchise. Well, I feel at this point I've already answered that question multiple times. Sure, there were stumbles along the way, and things really went off the rails by the end, but the heart and sincerity of the franchise still remains. And even in its worst moments, you can still catch glimpses of what made these films so successful and why so many people were endeared to them in the first place. And no corporate acquisition is ever going to sully that, despite how they try. As for Blue Sky, while the studio may have struggled over its history and met a premature demise, in the aftermath, I think we all finally figured out who BlueSky was and their creative voice. Multiple times I said BlueSky didn't have their own style to distinguish themselves from other animation studios, when, on the other hand, maybe they did. And at the time, we simply didn't see it. How I'll remember BlueSky, and how I hope you will too, is the studio that always went outside the box and took creative risks even when they really couldn't afford to. They were always trying something new, and aside from their cash cow, never really got complacent. Whether it be a musical about birds in Brazil, an adaptation of a beloved children's book or comic series, a fantasy epic set in our own backyard, a biting social commentary with robots, a story about racing snails, or a prehistoric dramatic comedy about found family that went from a small passion project to one of the biggest animated franchises that will ever exist. Not bad for a second attempt. And at least the legacy isn't quite over yet, as thanks to fan outcry, next year we'll see BlueSky's final film Nimona release and no doubt take the animation world by storm. And now, we're done. Meaning there is only one more loose end to tie up. So, until next time, I've been the Gladding Gladiator, and Arteice, this one's for you.
What's up, my mammals? This is Sid the Sloth from the movie Ice Age, and we're about to do this new dance, the Continental Drift. It's time to get up on your feet. It's easy to do. Just follow me. Move it out. Do the Sid. Take it back. And do the Sid. Step left. Then drift. Step right. And then drift. Crisscross. And do the man-made. Crisscross. And do the man-made. Now jump, jump. Wiggle your rump. And walk it out like Granny. To the front. And do the Sid. Take it back. And do the Sid.
When I die, this will be the legacy I leave behind. Oh, it's finally over. Hiya folks, and say hello to the brand new end card. Figured it was time to try something new that actually makes me look like a somewhat competent YouTuber. You'll likely know the drill at this point. A huge massive thank you to the wonderful, beautiful souls, the Wacky Deli, Jason S, Eelis Art, Torai Matson, Resplendent Nova, Red Mustached Alien, Oliver's Reviews and Shows, Zombie Rex, and Jesse James for supporting me over on Patreon. If you want to help support the channel and me as a creator, becoming a Patreon helps me more than y'all could ever know, and also gives you access to a lot of fun exclusive content as well as other perks, such as review requests and early access to all my videos. Also go check out GeekToon's own video covering BlueSky, where he got a different creator to cover each of their films, as a sort of farewell to the studio. I may or may not be in there. But yeah, that's all from me. Thanks so much for watching folks, and I'll see ya real soon.